Hello everyone. Welcome to Dead Time Stories. I know many of you enjoy listening to these videos as you fall asleep. So before you drift off, I'd love for you to leave a comment letting me know where in the world you're tuning in from. And if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and subscribe. Alright, now let's get comfortable, relax, and dive into tonight's story. The hum of the train was steady, rhythmic, like a heartbeat pulsing through steel veins. Laura pressed her forehead against the cool window, watching as the city lights of Chicago blurred past in streaks of yellow and white. She was headed south, bound for a small town in southern Illinois called Vienna, a place she had only ever heard about in passing from her grandmother. Her grandmother had died 6 weeks earlier. The funeral had been small, private, nothing like the woman herself, who had filled every room with noise and sharp wit when she was alive. Laura had inherited a box of her belongings, old photographs, brittle letters tied with string, and a hand-drawn map folded so many times the creases looked like scars. On the back, written in her grandmother's spidery hand, were 5 words, "Don't go there after dark." Laura didn't know why she was on this train. Grief, maybe. Curiosity, certainly. Her grandmother had spoken often of her childhood in Vienna, but always in fragments, always with a catch in her throat. Laura figured that by going there, she might fill in the spaces those silences left behind. Across the aisle, a man in a camouflage jacket shifted restlessly. He had boarded 2 stops earlier, and hadn't taken his eyes off her since. Laura tried not to notice, tried to keep her focus on the window, but eventually his stare grew heavy enough that she turned. "You headed to Vienna too?" he asked, his voice low and scratchy. Laura hesitated. "Yeah. Visiting family." He smirked, revealing a chipped tooth. "Not much left there. Folks clear out once they can. Only thing keeping it alive is that prison." Laura nodded politely. She knew about Vienna Correctional Center. It was a maximum security prison set on the edge of town, surrounded by high fences and pine trees. Her grandmother had never once mentioned it. The man leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Word of advice. Don't go poking around after dark. That town, it's not right." Laura stiffened. His words echoed the warning written on the back of her grandmother's map. She forced a smile, muttered thanks, and turned back toward the window, heart hammering. By the time the train screeched into the tiny station at Vienna, it was near dusk. The platform was almost empty, just 2 teenagers loitering with skateboards and an elderly woman hauling grocery bags. Laura stepped off, her backpack slung over one shoulder, the map tucked safely in her jacket pocket. The air smelled of damp earth and pine resin, a sharp contrast to the diesel stench of Chicago. She had rented a room above a diner on Main Street. The diner itself was a relic, with flickering neon letters that spelled out Lou's Cafe. The upstairs apartment was small but clean, with floral wallpaper peeling at the corners and a single bulb that hummed overhead. After dropping her bag, Laura spread the map across the kitchen table. Her grandmother's shaky lines led out of town, through woods, across a creek, and up to something marked only as the Hollow. The name alone gave Laura chills. She traced the route with her finger, imagining her grandmother as a child running through those same woods. She wanted to go there, needed to go there. But outside, the last of the daylight was bleeding away, shadows pooling like ink in the streets. Her grandmother's warning came back, "Don't go there after dark." So Laura folded the map, tucked it beneath her pillow, and told herself she would set out at first light. That night, however, sleep refused to come. From her window, she watched the streets below. The diner closed at 9, the neon flickered out, and the town seemed to dissolve into silence. But then she noticed something strange. Figures. Down by the end of Main Street, half hidden in shadow, 3 people stood perfectly still. Too still. They faced the same direction, toward the woods beyond the prison. None of them moved, not even when a stray dog trotted past. Laura rubbed her eyes, thinking maybe it was a trick of the dim light. But when she looked again, they were still there, unmoving, watching, waiting. A cold shiver traveled down her spine. And when the church bells struck midnight, they all turned their heads at once, toward her window. Laura stumbled back from the window, her pulse thundering in her ears. The room felt suddenly too small, the wallpaper pressing inward like a closing fist. She told herself she was imagining it, that the figures hadn't turned in unison, that shadows could play tricks on tired eyes. But when she forced herself to peek again, the street was empty. Gone. Her breath came out shaky, uneven. She closed the curtains tight and sat on the edge of the bed, listening to the silence of the town. No cars. No voices. Just the faint hum of the refrigerator downstairs and her own ragged breathing. Finally, exhaustion won. She curled up under the blanket with her grandmother's map clutched to her chest like a talisman, and drifted into uneasy sleep. The morning brought a deceptive calm. The sky was pale blue, the air sharp with autumn chill. From her window, the street looked perfectly ordinary, a man hosing down the sidewalk outside the hardware store, 2 women chatting outside the post office. No sign of the still figures from the night before. At the diner downstairs, Laura ordered black coffee and eggs. The waitress, a stout woman with kind eyes and deep laugh lines, gave her a curious look. "Don't see many strangers passing through," the waitress said. "Business or pleasure?" "Family," Laura replied, stirring cream into her coffee. "My grandmother grew up here." The waitress's eyebrows lifted. "Who was your grandma?" Laura hesitated. "Her maiden name was Whitlow. Anna Whitlow." The name landed like a stone dropped into a still pond. The waitress's smile faltered, just for a heartbeat, before returning. "Well, how about that? Been a long time since I heard that name." "You knew her?" Laura asked quickly. "Not personally. My mama used to talk about the Whitlow farm, out past the creek. Said it wasn't a place you'd want to wander." She lowered her voice. "Folks said bad things happened there." "What kind of bad things?" The waitress shook her head. "Just bad. Best to let the past lie where it is, honey." But Laura couldn't let it lie. After breakfast, she set out on foot, the map guiding her past the edge of town. The paved road gave way to dirt, and soon she was surrounded by trees. The further she went, the quieter it became. The air was heavy, muffled, as if the forest itself were holding its breath. She crossed a narrow creek, her shoes slipping on slick stones. The water was ice-cold, biting at her ankles. On the far side, the trees grew thicker, their branches knitting together overhead until the daylight dimmed. And then she saw it. The hollow. It wasn't a hollow in the ground but a clearing, perfectly round, as though carved by some enormous hand. At its center stood the rotting skeleton of a house. Boards warped, roof collapsed, vines crawling over the walls like veins. Laura's stomach twisted. This was her grandmother's childhood home. She stepped into the clearing, leaves crunching underfoot. The air here smelled wrong, like iron and damp ash. She approached the house slowly, almost reverently, and pushed open the broken door. Inside, shadows clung to every corner. The floor sagged, and the wallpaper had long since peeled away, leaving bare wood. But what struck Laura most was the silence. Not a bird, not a rustle of leaves, nothing. She wandered through the rooms, kitchen, living room, bedrooms, all stripped bare. Yet she couldn't shake the feeling she was being watched. In the upstairs hallway, her foot brushed against something half buried under dust. She crouched and pulled it free, a small, leather-bound journal. The initials AW were pressed into the cover. Her grandmother's. Laura's hands trembled as she opened it. The first pages were filled with childish handwriting, notes about chores, the weather, her brothers and sisters. But the later entries grew frantic, scrawled in uneven lines. "The hollow is not safe. Voices in the woods at night. They stand outside. They wait. Don't go near the well." Laura's eyes snapped up. A well? She hadn't seen one. She bolted outside, heart pounding, and scanned the clearing. That's when she noticed it, half hidden behind the house. A ring of stones, moss-covered and crumbling, with a rotted wooden cover lying askew. The well. Something deep inside her told her to run, to turn back, to never come near this place again. But another part, the part that had carried her here on a train, the part that had opened the journal, compelled her forward. She approached slowly, each step heavier than the last. The air grew colder, the silence deeper, and when she peered into the darkness of the well, something peered back. At first, Laura thought it was her own reflection. The water at the bottom of the well was perfectly still, black as glass, and she could almost make out the shape of her face. But then it blinked. Her breath hitched. She staggered back, gravel skittering under her shoes. The reflection, or whatever it was, didn't move away. It stayed fixed in the darkness, eyes open and unblinking now, watching her. A sudden gust of wind rattled the trees, though the sky above was still and cloudless. The journal in her hand flipped open, pages fluttering until one stopped against her palm. It followed me out of the well. The words were underlined 3 times, the ink smeared as though written in a frenzy. Laura slammed the journal shut, heart pounding so violently she felt it in her throat. She stumbled backward, gaze locked on the well, waiting for something, someone, to climb out. But nothing came. Not yet. By the time she made it back to town, her legs were aching and her nerves frayed. She forced herself to act casual as she walked into the diner for lunch, but her hands trembled so badly she nearly dropped the menu. The waitress noticed. "You okay, hon? You look like you seen a ghost." Laura forced a laugh, though it came out thin. "Just went exploring. Found my grandmother's old place." The waitress's eyes darkened. "The Hollow." Laura nodded. The waitress leaned closer, her voice dropping. "You need to stay away from there. Folks who go poking around don't always come back the same." "What do you mean?" The woman hesitated, as though weighing how much to say. Finally, she sighed. "My brother went out there when we were kids. He said he heard voices coming from the well. 2 weeks later, he disappeared. Sheriff said he ran away, but I know better. The Hollow takes people." Laura's stomach churned. She thought of the figures she'd seen on Main Street the night before, standing motionless, staring toward the woods. Does anyone else know about this?" she asked. "People know," the waitress said. "They just don't talk about it. That place is older than this town. Some things you can't bury." Laura excused herself quickly after that, barely touching her food. Back upstairs, she sat on her bed with the journal open across her lap. The entries grew darker, filled with frantic warnings. They come at night. They stand in the yard and whisper. If you look at them too long, they move closer. The well is never empty. Laura closed the book with shaking hands. She thought of leaving, packing her bag, catching the first train back to Chicago. But another part of her, the part that felt tethered to her grandmother, knew she couldn't walk away. Not yet. That night she tried to sleep, but every creak of the floorboards and every groan of the old building set her on edge. Around midnight she woke to a noise outside. Voices. She crept to the window, her pulse a drumbeat in her ears. Down on Main Street, the figures were back, 6 of them this time, standing perfectly still, faces turned toward the woods. Only now they weren't alone. A 7th figure stood closer, right in the middle of the street. Taller than the others, its limbs too long, its head tilted unnaturally to one side. And as Laura watched, it slowly raised one hand and pointed. Directly at her window. Laura dropped to the floor, her back pressed against the wall, chest heaving. Her room was suddenly suffocating, every shadow a threat. She waited, barely breathing, until the courage to peek again returned. The street was empty. The 7 figures, gone, as if they'd never been there at all. Laura sat in the dark for hours, unable to sleep, until the faint gray of dawn crept over the horizon. Her exhaustion was bone deep, but fear kept her awake. At first light, she made a decision. She would go back to the Hollow, to the well. She couldn't explain why. It felt less like choice and more like compulsion, as though her grandmother's words in the journal had seeped under her skin and rooted themselves there. By mid-morning, Laura was back at the tree line. The woods were quiet again, but now she noticed subtle things she had missed the day before. How the bird song stopped as she crossed the creek, how the air grew heavier the deeper she walked. When she reached the clearing, the hollow looked unchanged. rotting house, mossy stones, the gaping mouth of the well. But the silence seemed sharper, like broken glass. She approached the well slowly, the journal clutched in one hand, her phone in the other. She leaned over, trying to see the bottom. This time, there was no reflection. No eyes. Just darkness. Laura pulled out her phone, turned on the flashlight, and angled it downward. The beam didn't reach the bottom. The light seemed to dissolve into the black, swallowed whole. Then, faint but unmistakable, came a sound. A voice. Whispering. Laura's stomach dropped. She strained to hear, her pulse roaring in her ears. The voice was soft, fragmented, like wind slipping through a keyhole. But she caught words. Laura! Her name. She jerked back so hard she nearly dropped her phone. The journal tumbled from her grip, landing in the dirt beside the well. She jerked back so hard she nearly dropped her phone. The journal tumbled from her grip, landing in the dirt beside the well. For a moment she froze. Then, swallowing hard, she reached down to grab it. As her hand closed over the leather cover, she noticed something carved into the stones at the base of the well, faint, weathered letters she hadn't seen before. She brushed away moss and dirt until the words emerged. We stand with the hollow. The hairs on her arms prickled. Behind her, a twig snapped. Laura spun, heart slamming into her ribs. At the tree line, half hidden by the shadows, stood 3 figures. Still. Silent. Watching. Her breath caught. They hadn't been there a moment ago. She stumbled back toward the house, her shoes crunching on dry leaves. The figures didn't move, but she felt their gazes lock onto her like a weight pressing against her chest. Inside the ruins of the house, she crouched low, clutching the journal to her chest. Her hands shook as she flipped to the last entries. They will not stop. They wait for you to come to the well. If you hear your name, it's already too late. Laura slammed the book shut. Outside, the clearing was silent again. But she knew, with bone-deep certainty, that the figures were still there. And that night, when the town went silent, she would see them again. Closer. Laura barely remembered running back into town. The woods seemed endless, the trail winding longer than it had been before, as if the hollow itself were stretching the distance between her and safety. By the time she stumbled onto Main Street, the sun was already dipping low, the shadows lengthening across the cracked pavement. She didn't stop until she was inside her rented room, the door locked, curtains drawn tight. Her lungs burned, and her legs trembled with exhaustion. The journal lay on the bed, its worn leather cover smeared with dirt. She knew she should leave, pack her bag, run to the train station, never look back. But every time she thought of stepping away, she saw her grandmother's handwriting in her mind. Don't go there after dark. Her grandmother had gone through this. She had survived long enough to grow old. There had to be answers in what she left behind. Laura flipped the journal open again, scanning through the frantic scrawls. Some passages were unreadable, smeared by water or maybe tears. But one entry stood out, written in sharper, heavier strokes. The well is not a hole. It's a door. Laura's mouth went dry. As darkness settled over Vienna, her fear thickened into something sharp and suffocating. She turned every light on in the apartment, though the single bulbs only seemed to carve deeper shadows in the corners. She kept the journal close, rereading the same lines again and again, as if they might change and give her hope. Midnight came quietly. No church bells this time, only the distant hum of the prison floodlights beyond the trees. And then she heard it. A sound outside her window. Not footsteps. Not voices. Knocking. 3 deliberate taps against the glass. Laura froze, her breath snagged in her throat. Slowly, she turned her head. The curtain shifted, ever so slightly, as though someone's finger trailed along the fabric. Her phone lay on the nightstand. She reached for it, hands trembling, and snapped a picture toward the window, hoping the flash would scare off whoever was there. The burst of light filled the room, searing her eyes. When she blinked the spots away, her stomach lurched. The photo showed the outline of a face pressed against the glass. Pale, hollow-eyed, the features blurred like something half-remembered from a nightmare. Her phone slipped from her hand and clattered to the floor. The knocking came again. 3 taps. Then silence. Laura backed toward the far wall, clutching the journal like a shield. Her pulse roared in her ears. She told herself not to look, not to move the curtain, but the pressure of its presence grew unbearable, like a weight crushing her chest. Finally, she yanked the curtain back. The street below was empty. No one. But across the way, lining the far side of Main Street, stood the figures. Dozens of them now. Motionless, facing her building. Their heads tilted at the same unnatural angle, their shadows stretching long and sharp across the pavement. And in the front row, taller than the rest, stood the figure she had seen before, the one that pointed. This time, it didn't just point. It raised its hand and beckoned. Laura's entire body went cold. The taller figure's gesture was unmistakable, a slow curl of its elongated fingers, summoning her. She stumbled back from the window, nearly tripping over the edge of the bed. Her instincts screamed at her to run, to lock herself away until morning, but another voice, quieter yet stronger, pushed back. They know you're here. They've always known. Running won't matter. Her grandmother had written it in the journal. If you hear your name, it's already too late. And hadn't she heard it at the well? That faint whisper curling up from the black? Her mouth went dry. Maybe she had already crossed the threshold her grandmother had warned against. She stuffed the journal into her backpack, zipped it shut, and slung it over her shoulder. Her gaze fell on her phone, lying on the floor where she had dropped it. The cracked screen flickered with the photo she had just taken, the hollow face at the window. Her stomach turned, but she picked it up anyway. She needed a light, a lifeline, something. The knocking came again. Not at the window this time. At the door. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. Her throat tightened. She didn't move, didn't breathe, but the air seemed to press in around her, waiting. The knocking came again, louder this time, followed by a faint scrape of fingernails dragging down the wood. And then a voice. Laura! She clapped her hands over her ears, heart pounding, but it didn't matter. The voice wasn't outside, it was inside her head, curling around her thoughts like smoke. The doorknob rattled. Something inside Laura snapped. She bolted, grabbing the keys from the dresser and shoving them into her pocket. Without thinking, she flung the window open, climbed onto the fire escape, and descended into the street below. The air outside was damp, heavy with the scent of pine and wet asphalt. She expected the figures to vanish like before, but they didn't. They stood across Main Street, waiting. The tall one stepped forward. Laura ran. Her shoes slapped against the pavement as she tore down the deserted street, the fluorescent hum of the prison lights glowing faintly on the horizon. She didn't dare look back, but she felt them behind her, shadows stretching, feet that didn't quite touch the ground. She veered off the road and into the trees, branches whipping against her face. Her lungs burned, her legs screamed, but she didn't stop until the woods opened into the clearing. The hollow. The house loomed in the moonlight, broken and skeletal. The well gaped like a wound in the earth. Laura collapsed to her knees, gasping for breath. The figures were gone, swallowed by the forest behind her. But the clearing wasn't empty. The air vibrated with a low hum, a sound she felt in her teeth, in her bones. The journal slipped from her backpack, falling open in the dirt. The page it landed on was one she hadn't read before. When they call you, there is only one way to end it. You must give the well what it wants. Laura stared at the words, dread sinking into her stomach. From the darkness of the well, the whisper rose again. Laura! Her name seeped out of the well like smoke, thin, drawn out, almost tender. Laura clapped her hands over her ears, but it didn't matter. The voice was inside, reverberating in her chest, her bones, her very thoughts. She staggered back, eyes fixed on the moss-covered stones. The air around the well seemed to ripple, bending moonlight like heat haze. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but her legs felt locked in place, rooted to the earth. The journal lay open at her feet, the words almost glowing in the pale light. You must give the well what it wants. What does it want? she whispered, voice cracking. A second whisper rose, deeper than the first, overlapping and distorted, as though two voices spoke from one throat. Come closer. Laura shook her head violently. No. But her body betrayed her. One foot slid forward through the dirt. Then another. Her chest tightened with panic. She wasn't choosing to move, something was pulling her. She dug her nails into her palms, fighting for control. Stop, she hissed. I'm not. The tall figure stepped out from the tree-line. Laura froze. Moonlight revealed its face, or what should have been a face. It was pale, almost translucent, features blurred like something half-formed. Its mouth stretched too wide, opening and closing silently, like it was struggling to shape words. Behind it, dozens more figures emerged, slipping between the trees, surrounding the clearing. All stood perfectly still, heads tilted in unison. Their silence was worse than any scream. Laura backed up until her heels scraped the stones of the well. Her breath came shallow, frantic. What do you want from me? She cried, voice breaking. The tall figure raised its arm and pointed, not at her, but at the well. The journal's words pulsed in her mind. You must give the well what it wants. Her grandmother had been here. She had written these warnings. Somehow, she had survived. But how? What had she given? Laura's eyes darted to the journal itself. Could that be it? An offering? She snatched it up with trembling hands and hurled it into the well. The leather cover vanished into the dark with a hollow echo. For a moment, everything stilled. The whispers ceased. The figure stood silent, waiting. Then, slowly, the tall figure tilted its head back toward her. And shook it. No. The air vibrated again, harsher this time, making her teeth ache. The voice rose once more from the well, louder, clearer, undeniable. Not the book. You. The word crashed through her like thunder. You. Laura stumbled back, her spine colliding with the jagged stones of the well. Every nerve in her body screamed to run, but there was nowhere left, just the hollow-eyed figures encircling her, and the gaping mouth of the earth yawning behind her. She shook her head violently. No, no, you can't have me! Her voice cracked, thin against the heavy silence of the clearing. The tall figure raised its hand again. Slowly, deliberately, it pointed at her chest. From the forest, the others followed suit. Dozens of pale arms lifted in unison, fingers like needles all aimed at her. The ground trembled. Stones rattled around the lip of the well. The journal's last words seared in her memory. When they call you, there is only one way to end it. No, she whispered, clutching her arms around herself. There has to be another way. The whisper rose again, dozens of voices weaving into one, a chorus crawling up from the pit. Laura, come home. Her knees buckled. Her grandmother had escaped this place, hadn't she? Or had she only delayed it? Maybe survival wasn't escape. Maybe it was endurance, a lifelong shadow. Images of her grandmother's funeral flickered in her mind. How quickly the body had been closed in the coffin. How pale she had looked in those final months. A thought, cold and merciless, crept in. Did the hollow never really let her go? Laura's vision blurred with tears. Why me? She whispered, her voice breaking. The tall figure stepped closer, the others parting for it. Its head tilted, mouth twitching like a grotesque smile. Because you hurt us. The voice was clear this time, not from the well, not from her mind, but from it. The forest groaned with the sound of bending branches. The ground vibrated beneath her feet. Something enormous shifted in the darkness below, deep inside the well, like chains dragging against stone. Laura's breath came ragged, desperate. She knew, down to the marrow of her bones, that if she stayed another moment, she would be dragged down into that blackness and never see the surface again. But the circle of figures tightened. Every exit was blocked. The only path left was the one behind her. The well. The stones of the well pressed cold against Laura's back. The circle of figures loomed closer, silent but suffocating, their eyeless faces locked on her. Behind them, the trees leaned inward as though the forest itself wanted to swallow her whole. Her breathing turned shallow. No, no, no! She glanced over her shoulder into the pit. The darkness inside seemed alive, shifting with a slow, pulsing rhythm, like something vast and breathing below. The whisper quelled up again, curling around her name. Laura! The sound dug under her skin. It didn't come from above or below, it came from within. She clutched her head, nails biting into her scalp. Get out of me! She screamed. The tall figure moved closer, impossibly slow, its head cocked at that grotesque angle. Its long arms lifted like a marionette's. And then, its mouth opened wide. Wider. Too wide. Laura stumbled sideways, unable to tear her gaze away as its jaw stretched far past anything human, splitting open into a black cavity that echoed the well itself. From its throat, a sound emerged, low, guttural, and ancient. The others around it began to mimic, mouths stretching, their bodies swaying in perfect unison. It was a chant. A summoning. Laura's knees shook. Her eyes darted around the clearing for escape, any gap, any weakness, but the circle was solid. The forest behind them was impenetrable, darker now, as though night itself had thickened. Her chest tightened. Her grandmother's warning burned through her thoughts. Don't go there after dark. But she had. She realized then, it had never been about avoiding the hollow. It had been about avoiding the hour. Once darkness fell, the hollow owned you. The ground beneath her feet cracked. A jagged seam split the dirt at the well's edge, and a foul gust of air blasted upward, thick with the stench of rot and iron. The journal's words screamed in her memory, "You must give the well what it wants." Her trembling hands clutched at her backpack, searching for something. Anything. She yanked out her phone, its cracked screen still glowing faintly. The last photo, that face at her window, stared back at her. "No," she whispered. "Not me. Not like this." The figures swayed closer, their chant swelling. The tall one lowered its stretched hand toward her, palm open, waiting. Laura gritted her teeth. If the well wanted her, it would have to drag her in screaming. She hurled the phone straight into the black maw of the well. For a moment, the chant faltered. The figure stilled. Even the air seemed to hold its breath. Then the ground shook violently, the clearing splitting with cracks that radiated outward like veins. The well roared, an inhuman, furious sound that rattled her bones. Laura's heart lurched. She had defied it. But she had not satisfied it. The tall figure screeched, a sound so sharp it split the night like glass. And with that cry, the circle began to move. Closer. Faster. Closing in. Laura bolted. Her legs barely obeyed, but adrenaline shoved her forward. She ducked beneath the collapsing porch of the ruined house, scrambling through rotted beams and tangled vines. The figures closed in behind her, their movements no longer slow and deliberate but jerky, twitching, unnatural. Their chant grew louder, rattling the air, until it wasn't words anymore but a single, guttural command that vibrated in her chest. Down! 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 The ground quaked harder, dirt splitting into wide cracks. Laura stumbled, nearly falling through one before catching herself against the wall. The hollow wasn't just the name of the clearing, it was becoming literal. The earth itself was opening. She darted through the skeleton of the house, lungs burning. Boards groaned and snapped beneath her feet, threatening to collapse entirely. A doorway ahead gaped open, moonlight spilling in. She threw herself toward it, but a shape surged past the frame, a figure blocking her escape. Its head jerked, mouth twitching with a grotesque almost smile. Laura screamed, spun, and took the stairs instead. The staircase swayed under her weight, each step cracking like brittle bone. She burst into the upstairs hallway, the same place where she had found the journal, her chest heaving. But the figures were already inside. They glided soundlessly through the walls, through the floorboards, their eyeless faces glowing faintly in the dark. Trapped. Her gaze snapped to the window at the end of the hall. Without thinking, she sprinted. Her shoulders slammed into the frame, glass shattering around her as she half dived, half fell into the night air. She hit the ground hard, pain shooting up her side, but there was no time to check for injuries. She scrambled to her feet, ears ringing, and ran. The forest. The creek. Anywhere but here. Branches lashed at her arms as she tore through the trees. Behind her, the chant continued, echoing from every direction, though she didn't dare look back. Her only focus was forward, forward, forward. Finally, she stumbled onto the creek bed. Her shoes slipped on slick stones as she splashed through, icy water soaking her jeans. The freezing bite jolted her back to focus. On the far side, the trees thinned. A faint orange glow shimmered in the distance. The prison floodlights. She clawed her way up the muddy bank, gasping for air, and sprinted toward the lights like they were salvation itself. But halfway across the clearing, she stopped dead. Figures. Lined up just outside the reach of the floodlights, dozens of them, hundreds, maybe, standing shoulder to shoulder, waiting. Their heads tilted in unison, all turned toward her. And among them, in the center, was the tall one. It raised its arm again. Slowly. Patiently. And beckoned. The prison lights buzzed, cold and indifferent, casting long shadows across the grass. The chain-link fences loomed just beyond the figures, topped with razor wire that gleamed in the moonlight. Laura's chest heaved. Safety was right there, but they were between her and it. The tall one's hand curled slowly inward, the gesture deliberate, taunting. "No!" she rasped. Her throat was raw, her voice nearly gone. "I'm not going with you." The chant began again, faint at first but swelling as dozens of mouths moved in eerie unison. The air vibrated with their voices. Down! 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 Laura staggered backward, torn between the floodlights behind the figures and the forest at her back. Both paths were blocked. Both meant death, or worse. Her boots struck something hard. She glanced down. A length of rusted rebar, half buried in the mud. She snatched it up, hands trembling, clutching it like a weapon, though she knew deep down it wouldn't matter. These things weren't flesh and bone. But her grandmother had survived. That thought anchored her, however thin. There had to be a way. She shouted into the night, voice breaking. "What do you want from me?" The tall figure stepped closer. Its mouth opened, splitting wide, black and endless. The chant fell silent. And a single word, guttural and ancient, rolled out of its throat. Return. Laura's blood ran cold. Return. Not just to the hollow. Not just to the well. To it. Something shifted beneath her feet. The ground trembled again, cracks spidering out across the clearing. From the prison, spotlights swung wildly as if reacting to the quake. She heard distant shouts, guards calling to each other, but their voices sounded muffled, far away, like she was already slipping into another world. "No," she whispered. "I won't." She turned and bolted back toward the forest, gripping the rebars so tightly it cut into her palm. Branches tore at her clothes as she ran, faster than before, fueled by something beyond fear, raw defiance. But the forest was wrong now. The path twisted in ways she didn't remember. Landmarks vanished. The creek she had crossed earlier was gone, replaced by dry, cracked earth. Every turn led her back toward the same place, the same clearing. The hollow. Her lungs screamed, her legs wobbled, but when she stumbled into the clearing again, the sight stole what breath she had left. The well was no longer just a mossy ring of stones. It had grown. The ground around it split open wide, a yawning chasm pulsing with black mist, as though the earth itself were tearing apart. From its depths came the sound of chains dragging, of something vast and waiting. The figures ringed the clearing. The tall one stood at the edge of the pit, head tilted, arms open. Welcoming. Laura's grip on the rebar slipped. She was trembling too hard. The voice rose from the depths again, wrapping around her name like a noose. "Laura, return." The word return vibrated through her body like an electric current. Laura fell to her knees, palms digging into the cold dirt. The cracks around the pit widened with a groan, and a blast of air surged upward, wet, metallic, like breath from something that had never seen the light of day. Her stomach lurched. She wanted to crawl away, to claw her way back to the prison lights, but her muscles locked. It was as if the earth itself pinned her in place. The tall figure stepped closer, its limbs jerking at strange, unnatural angles. Moonlight revealed more of its face now, skin stretched too thin, features blurred like a memory smeared across glass. Its mouth opened, wide and wider, until it was nothing but darkness. The others swayed with it, whispering her name in broken chorus. Laura! 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 She clutched the rebar in both hands, knuckles white. I'm not yours! She screamed, her voice echoing off the skeletal remains of the house. The figures froze. The chant stopped. For a heartbeat, the clearing was silent. Then the tall figure's head snapped to the side in a violent jerk. A shriek tore from its throat, high-pitched and piercing, like metal ripping apart. The chorus rose again, louder, more frenzied, rattling the very trees. The ground split wider, and from the chasm something began to climb. A hand? Enormous. Gray. Fingers tipped with claws like rusted iron. It dragged across the stone lip of the well, leaving deep gouges. Another hand followed, pulling something vast and impossible closer to the surface. Chains clattered in the dark below, snapping taut as though holding back the weight of an entire world. Laura's breath came in sharp, panicked gasps. Her grandmother's warnings echoed in her head. Don't go there after dark. Don't look too long. Don't answer when they call your name. But she had done all three. The rebar shook in her grip. If she didn't act now, she knew she'd never leave this clearing alive. Her gaze snapped to the old house. The upper floor sagged dangerously, its roof half collapsed. The support beams leaned right over the edge of the pit. An idea sparked. Desperate. Reckless. But it was all she had. With a cry, Laura sprinted toward the ruins. She clambered up the crumbling steps, ignoring the way the boards bowed beneath her weight. The figures didn't follow, they simply turned their heads in unison, watching. She shoved her shoulder into one of the leaning beams, splinters biting into her skin. The wood groaned but didn't break. She screamed and shoved harder, summoning every shred of fear and fury left inside her. Finally, the beam snapped. The house groaned like a dying thing. Walls shuddered, the roof tilted, and then with a deafening crack, half the structure collapsed inward, straight into the widening pit. The ground convulsed. The chasm swallowed the ruin in a spray of dust and stone. The massive clawed hands recoiled, chains rattling violently as the thing below shrieked in rage. Laura stumbled back, choking on dust, ears ringing. The tall figure screeched, its body convulsing, jerking in violent spasms. Around it, the others collapsed to their knees, heads bowed toward the pit as if in worship. And for a brief, impossible moment, Laura felt something shift. The hollow was angry. But it was wounded. And it wasn't finished with her yet. The air burned in her lungs as Laura staggered backward, coughing on clouds of dust. The ruin of the house had vanished into the pit, leaving only rubble teetering at the jagged edge. For a moment she thought she had done it, sealed the thing below, forced it back. But the figures did not disappear. They remained kneeling in a circle around the chasm, their bowed heads trembling as though in prayer. The tall one twitched, its body jerking violently, mouth still stretched impossibly wide. A guttural roar tore from its throat, not rage, not pain, but laughter. The ground lurched beneath Laura's feet. She stumbled, nearly falling as the cracks widened, stones tumbling into the abyss. From below came a sound like grinding chains, louder now, nearer, as though the collapse had freed more than it had buried. Laura's stomach nodded. Her act hadn't stopped it. It had only made the hollow hungrier. The voice rose again, this time so loud it rattled the trees and rang in her bones. Return. The kneeling figures lifted their heads in unison. Their mouths hung open, black voids, chanting in time with the roar. Return. 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 Laura's vision blurred with tears. She spun, looking for escape, but the forest had changed again. The path she had taken was gone, replaced by walls of trees knotted together, branches clawing like fingers. The prison lights she had glimpsed before were nowhere. She was trapped. Her eyes landed on the creek. The same water she had crossed earlier now cut through the clearing, a thin silver ribbon under the moonlight. But the way it moved was wrong, faster, thicker, almost alive. Her grandmother's voice surfaced in her memory, faint but clear, something she had once said when Laura was a child afraid of the dark. Running water breaks their hold. Always remember that. The chant grew louder, the figures closing in. Laura's heart pounded. It was her only chance. She bolted for the creek. The tall figure screeched and lunged, its limbs snapping forward like broken branches. Laura felt its shadow fall over her, cold and suffocating, but she threw herself into the water. The shock was brutal. The creek was deeper than she remembered, pulling her under with icy hands. She kicked, flailed, gasping as water filled her nose and throat. The current dragged her downstream, spinning her through rocks and branches. Above the roar of water, she heard the scream of the tall figure, a sound of fury, high and shrill, cut short as if choked off. When Laura finally broke the surface, gasping for air, the hollow was gone. The clearing was gone. She lay on her back in the shallows, staring up at the pale dawn sky. Birds were singing. The forest looked ordinary again. Her body trembled violently, but she was alive. She dragged herself onto the muddy bank, coughing up creek water, and looked around. There was no sign of the pit, no figures, no ruined house. Just trees and sunlight breaking through the canopy. For the first time since arriving in Vienna, there was no whisper, no voice in her head. But then she saw it. On the opposite bank, half sunken in the mud, lay her grandmother's journal. Pages fluttering in the breeze, open to a new entry she swore hadn't been there before. In her grandmother's unmistakable handwriting. The hollow never lets go. Laura's breath hitched. The journal lay there as though it had been waiting, its pages fluttering gently in the breeze. She crawled to the edge of the creek, mud slick beneath her palms, and stared across the water. The words on the open page were sharp, deliberate. Her grandmother's hand. The hollow never lets go. Her stomach clenched. "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "I'm done. I'm out. You can't have me." But the words on the page shifted. The breeze turned the paper slowly, deliberately, until another entry revealed itself, one written in heavier strokes, the ink smeared as though pressed down with desperate force. "It follows you." Laura stumbled back from the creek, her chest tightening as though the forest itself were closing in. She tried to tear her gaze away, but her eyes were drawn back, compelled. The journal's pages turned again, faster now, though there was no wind. Not just in Vienna. Not just in the hollow. Everywhere. "No!" Laura screamed. Her voice cracked against the trees. "You're lying!" But deep down she knew. She remembered her grandmother's final months, those vacant stares, the way she muttered at night when she thought no one was listening, the way she'd begged Laura's mother never to leave her alone after dark. The hollow had followed her grandmother out. It had waited. And now it had Laura. A faint sound rippled through the forest. Not the low chant of before, not the guttural roar from the pit. Something worse. Knocking. 3 deliberate raps, echoing against the trees. Laura spun wildly, heart hammering, but there was no one. No figures. No tall shadow. Another knock came, closer this time. Against bark. Against wood. Her hand flew to her pocket. The phone she'd thrown into the well was gone, of course, but her keys were still there. She pulled them out instinctively, the familiar jangle grounding her for half a second. Then she noticed the smallest key, the one to her apartment back in Chicago. It was wet, slick with creek water, and as she stared at it, a single drop of black liquid fell from the teeth of the key onto her palm. It wasn't water at all. Her throat closed. The forest around her fell silent, birds gone, wind gone, as though the world were holding its breath. And in that silence, a voice whispered in her ear, close, too close. "See you at home." Laura's scream tore out of her throat before she realized it, echoing through the quiet woods. She spun, swinging the rebar wildly, but the space behind her was empty. No figures. No tall shadow. Only trees standing still, their bark scarred with faint lines like fingernail scratches. Her chest heaved. She looked down at her palm again. The key glistened wet with that oily black liquid, sticky and cold. It seemed to pulse, as though the hollow had marked her. Her grandmother's words came back in fragments. Don't go there after dark. Don't answer when they call your name. The hollow never lets go. It was already with her. Laura shoved the key back into her pocket and staggered to her feet. She needed to get out of these woods, out of Vienna, out of anywhere the hollow might reach. But deep down, a sick dread gnawed at her. She could cross 1,000 miles and still hear those whispers. By midday she stumbled back into town, mud-caked, scratched, and trembling. Main Street looked ordinary, almost mocking in its normalcy. Cars passed, a child laughed outside the diner, a man swept dust from his storefront. No one looked twice at her. She went straight to the train station, clutching her backpack tight. Her hands shook as she bought a ticket back to Chicago, not caring about the price, only about leaving. The station master gave her a strange look when he handed her the stub. You sure you want to go tonight? Last train out gets in awful late. Laura forced a tight smile. I don't care. He shrugged, stamping the ticket. Suit yourself? She sat on the bench, jittering with restless energy, scanning the shadows for movement. The figures didn't appear. The hollow's whispers were quiet. But every so often, she swore she felt eyes on her. When the train finally screeched into the station, she boarded without looking back. Hours later, the skyline of Chicago rose against the night. Relief washed over her as she stepped onto the platform, breathing in the familiar city air. The crowd bustled around her. Ordinary people, living ordinary lives. She was safe. She had to be. She walked the familiar blocks to her apartment, the street lamps buzzing overhead, the hum of traffic filling her ears. By the time she reached her door, her exhaustion had settled into every muscle. She just wanted to collapse, to forget. The keys jingled in her hand as she slid the apartment key into the lock. It stuck at first, like the metal was swollen, but then clicked open. She stepped inside. The air was wrong. Too still. Too cold. Her apartment looked the same, the sagging couch, the books stacked in the corner, the faint city glow through the blinds. But her stomach dropped as her eyes landed on the kitchen table. Something was there. Her grandmother's journal. Open to the last page. New words written in fresh, wet ink. Welcome home. Laura froze in the doorway, the weight of the journal's message pressing down on her chest until she could barely breathe. She hadn't brought it back. She'd seen it sink into the mud by the creek, pages ruined. Yet here it was, pristine, waiting for her like a gift. Her hand shook as she closed the door behind her, the lock clicking far too loud in the silence. Every shadow in the apartment seemed darker now, deeper, as if they were hiding something just out of sight. She crept toward the table. The journal's pages fluttered though no breeze moved. Ink shimmered faintly, still wet, letters curling with almost organic precision. You left the hollow. But the hollow does not leave you. Laura's knees buckled. She pulled out a chair, collapsed into it, and buried her face in her hands. Tears burned her eyes, but she forced them back. What do you want from me? She whispered, voice hoarse. The journal turned another page on its own. To return. No, she hissed. I'm not going back. You can't make me. Another page flipped, the sound sharp in the stillness. You already have. Her breath hitched. She stumbled to her feet and rushed to the window. The city stretched below, vibrant and alive, cars crawling, neon signs glowing. This was Chicago, her city. She wasn't in Vienna anymore. And then she saw them. On the corner across the street, beneath the glow of a flickering street lamp, stood 3 figures. Still. Silent. Heads tilted in perfect unison. Her stomach dropped. No! The journal's pages flipped again, rapid now, words scrawling across them in real time as though an invisible hand were writing. We stand at the edges first. We wait in the shadows. Soon we will be closer. A sound broke the silence. Knocking. 3 deliberate raps. Laura spun, staring at her apartment door. The knocking came again, louder this time, rattling the frame. Her phone buzzed violently in her pocket. She pulled it out with shaking hands. A text notification filled the cracked screen. From unknown. Downstairs. Her legs gave out, and she collapsed against the wall. The knocking stopped. The silence was worse. Then, from the stairwell outside her apartment, she heard it, the scrape of long nails dragging slowly along the wood, heading upward. The scraping grew louder, closer, an unbearable screech of nails raking up the stairwell toward her door. Laura pressed her back against the wall, clutching her phone like a weapon though she knew it was useless. Step by step the sound climbed. Wood groaned. Shadows beneath the doorframe shifted with movement. Her phone buzzed again. Another text. From unknown. Let us in. No, she whispered, shaking. No, no, no. She backed toward the kitchen, eyes darting to the fire escape window above the sink. Her only chance. She shoved it open, cold night air rushing in, the city's hum suddenly fragile, unreal. She climbed out onto the metal grating, breath ragged, and pulled the windows shut behind her. From this vantage, she could see the street below. They were everywhere. Dozens of figures stood scattered along the sidewalks, in doorways, beneath the jaundiced glow of street lights. All motionless. All facing upward, toward her. Their heads tilted in that same impossible angle, necks bent like broken dolls. The tallest one stood in the street directly below her window. It didn't move, didn't gesture. Just stared. Laura clutched the railing, bow rising in her throat. The fire escape rattled faintly, metal groaning. She froze. Then realized it wasn't the wind. Something was climbing. She peered over the edge. A pale hand gripped the iron bars below, fingers long and skeletal, nails blackened like rot. Another hand reached higher, pulling a figure upward with jerky, unnatural movements. Panic surged white-hot through her veins. She bolted up the fire escape ladder, shoes clanging against rusted steps. Her lungs burned, her chest tightening, but she didn't stop until she reached the roof. She hauled herself onto the tarred surface and collapsed, gasping. The city stretched out around her, bright, loud, alive. But up here, above it all, it felt like she was in another world entirely. She crawled to the edge and looked down. The figures were spreading, filling the street, more and more of them sliding out from alleys and doorways. The tallest tilted its head back, pale face turned toward her. For the first time, Laura saw its mouth move. And though no sound carried to her ears, she knew exactly what it said. Jump! Laura's stomach lurched. The word wasn't just mouthed, it crashed inside her skull, echoing until her thoughts frayed. Jump! Her knees weakened, a strange pull rising in her chest. It wasn't fear, not even panic, it was compulsion. Her body leaned forward, toes curling against the rooftop edge. No! She gasped, dragging herself back. Her palms scraped against tar and gravel, leaving her hands raw. She forced herself to focus. The figures below, the pale faces, the way they swayed in unison as though her hesitation was part of their ritual. Her phone buzzed again. She almost didn't look, but the vibration against her thigh was unbearable. From unknown. The well is waiting. Her vision blurred. She dropped the phone, and it skittered across the roof, the cracked screen glowing against the dark. The tall figure below tilted its head further, unnatural bones bending in a way no human body should. Jump! The pull grew stronger, as if invisible hands gripped her shoulders, tugging her toward the edge. Her body resisted, but her mind frayed, splintered by exhaustion, fear, and the relentless whisper. She clutched the rebar tighter, pressing the jagged end against her thigh, the pain a desperate anchor. No! She hissed through gritted teeth. I'm not yours! The figures below stilled. The tall one lowered its hand. For the first time, the whisper inside her mind paused, the compulsion breaking like a wave pulling back from shore. But then the silence shifted. A sound rose from the street, soft at first, then multiplying. Knocking. Not on doors. Not on windows. On the pavement itself. Dozens of pale hands, slapping the asphalt in perfect rhythm. 3 knocks. Pause. 3 knocks. Pause. The sound echoed off the buildings, rolling upward, rattling through her chest. Laura crawled backward across the roof, trying to escape the rhythm, but there was no escape. The knocking came from all sides now, up through the walls, the stairwell, the very bones of the building. And then, faint but unmistakable, she heard it from behind her. 3 knocks. On the rooftop door. The knocks reverberated through the metal door, slow and deliberate, each one rattling the hinges. Laura scrambled back, her chest heaving, eyes locked on the handle. It turned. Just a fraction. Then stopped. She clutched the rebar so tight her knuckles went white. "Don't you come in," she whispered, voice cracking. The handle twitched again. This time, it held steady, as though whoever, or whatever, was on the other side was waiting. Testing her. The knocking from below intensified, dozens of pale hands drumming the pavement in that relentless rhythm. 3 beats. Pause. 3 beats. Pause. The sound grew louder, faster, until it wasn't knocking anymore but a roar of percussion rattling through the night. Laura pressed her palms to her ears, but it didn't matter. The sound was inside her, vibrating through her teeth, her bones. The rooftop door shuddered. A long, slow scrape followed, nails dragging down its surface. Then silence. Laura held her breath. The city beyond buzzed with traffic, horns, voices. All normal. Yet up here, she was trapped in a world where the hollow still breathed. Her phone buzzed again, face down on the roof. The vibration skittered across the tar until the cracked screen glowed against the dark. She didn't want to look. She couldn't. But she did. From unknown. It doesn't matter where you run. The hollow is the door. You opened it. Now we're here. Tears blurred her vision. "Why me?" she whispered, her voice breaking. "Why not leave me alone?" The phone buzzed again before she could drop it. From unknown. Because you listened. The rooftop door creaked. Slowly, almost gently, it began to open. A sliver of blackness appeared in the gap. Not the darkness of the stairwell below, but something thicker, deeper, like the pit itself had followed her here. Laura staggered to her feet, heart hammering so hard she thought her ribs might crack. She backed toward the roof's edge, the figures below lifting their faces in unison to watch. The door groaned wider. A pale hand curled around the edge, fingers long, nails dragging sparks against the metal as it pulled itself through. And then a head. Tilted. Eyeless. The tall figure stepped onto the roof. This time, it wasn't pointing. It was reaching. Laura's scream tore from her throat before she could choke it down. The tall figure's arms stretched unnaturally long, joints bending backward as it reached toward her. Its hand flexed, fingers clawing at the air like it was already closing around her throat. She stumbled backward until her heels hit the rooftop ledge. Below, the street swarmed with figures, all of them staring straight up at her, heads cocked at the same impossible angle. Their pale faces gleamed in the city lights, mouths slightly open as though drinking her fear. The tall one moved closer. Each step was a grotesque shudder, as if its limbs were being pulled by unseen strings. The air grew thick, suffocating, pressing down on her lungs. Laura raised the rebar, holding it between them like a crucifix. "Stay back!" she shrieked. The figure stopped. Its head tilted, and for the first time she saw its mouth close, then twitch. It smiled. The city around her dimmed. The glow of neon signs across the street sputtered out, one by one. The street lamps flickered and died. In seconds, all of Chicago seemed to dissolve into shadow, the horizon swallowed by black. Only the rooftop remained. Laura's stomach dropped. It wasn't just following her. It was taking her world apart. The tall figure stretched its arm again. Its hand hovered inches from her face, cold air curling off it like frost. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her memory, running water breaks their hold. Her eyes shot to the fire escape. The alley below? The hydrant at the corner? The rain-slick street. Maybe, just maybe, it would work. With a cry, Laura swung the rebar. It cut through the figure's arm, not severing it but scattering its form like smoke. The thing recoiled, its body twitching violently. The rooftop door behind it slammed shut with a thunderous clang. Laura didn't wait. She hurled herself over the ledge, catching the fire escape railing with both hands. Pain tore through her shoulders, but she held on, forcing herself to scramble down the rattling metal stairs. She hit the pavement hard, knees buckling, and staggered toward the hydrant at the corner. Her breath came ragged, desperate. The figures lining the street didn't move, didn't block her. They just watched, waiting. She grabbed the hydrant, tearing at the valve. It didn't budge. She screamed and pounded the rebar against it, again and again, until metal shrieked. Finally, the valve snapped. A geyser of water exploded upward, drenching the street in a freezing torrent. The figures screamed. Not with mouths, but with their whole bodies, a soundless convulsion, like the water itself was burning them. Their shapes flickered, blurred, and in seconds the street was empty. Laura collapsed to her knees in the spray, sobbing, shaking, soaked to the bone. For the first time, there was silence. But as the hydrant water pooled around her, black tendrils rippled through it, ink-like veins spreading outward. And from the reflection in the puddle, the tall figure leaned close, its mouth at her ear. "Water won't save you forever." Laura recoiled, splashing backward, her eyes fixed on the puddle. The reflection rippled with her movement, but the tall figure's face stayed perfectly still, grinning up at her from the black sheen of water. Its mouth stretched wider than before, splitting almost to its ears. She scrambled to her feet, heart hammering, backing away from the hydrant. The spray soaked her hair, plastered her clothes to her skin, but she barely felt it. The puddle whispered, "Every door you close, we open another." Laura clapped her hands over her ears, but the voice vibrated through her skull. Her vision swam, dizziness overwhelming her. She stumbled against a lamppost, gasping for air. The city around her flickered. For a moment she saw Chicago, cars, street signs, buildings humming with neon. Then it all warped, bending sideways like a warped film reel. She blinked, and the hollow was there again, the clearing, the pit, the kneeling figures. She blinked again, and the city snapped back. Her stomach dropped. They weren't just following her. They were overlapping her world with theirs, dragging her city into the hollow. "No," she rasped. "I won't let you." Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She didn't want to look, but she did. From unknown. "Don't fight. Just return." Her thumb hovered over the screen. For a fleeting, terrifying second, she almost typed back. Almost gave them acknowledgement. She threw the phone into the hydrant's spray instead. It sparked, flickered, then went dark, swept into the gutter. The street fell silent again. She staggered home, every step heavy with exhaustion, dread crawling in her stomach. By the time she reached her apartment, dawn was breaking, soft light painting the building's gold. The world seemed normal again. She collapsed on the couch, soaked, shivering. Sleep dragged at her, but fear kept her awake. Every creak of the pipes, every hum of the fridge made her flinch. Hours passed. And then, knocking. She bolted upright, breath caught in her throat. Not at the door this time. From the bathroom. 3 sharp raps. She crept forward, feet heavy, dread coiling in her gut. The knocking came again, louder. Her shaking hand twisted the knob, pushing the door open. The bathroom mirror was fogged, though the air was cold. Letters traced themselves across the glass, dripping with condensation. "Welcome back to the hollow." Laura staggered backward, nearly tripping over the rug. The mirror letters dripped, each line trailing like veins. Her chest tightened until it hurt. "No," she whispered, clutching the doorframe. "I left. I left!" The letters smeared and shifted, strokes rewriting themselves as though an unseen hand dragged across the glass. "You never leave." Her stomach lurched. She grabbed a towel, scrubbing furiously at the mirror. The letters smeared into black streaks, thicker than condensation, staining the cloth in her hands. When she looked down, the towel wasn't damp, it was sticky, tar-like, reeking of iron. Her scream tore from her throat as she hurled the towel into the tub. She stumbled back into the hallway, slamming the bathroom door shut. The knocking started again. 3 raps. From inside the mirror. Laura pressed both hands to her ears, shaking her head. Stop! 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 Her grandmother's voice flickered through her memory, as if pulled from decades past. It doesn't matter where you are. When it wants you, it will find the way. She wanted to run, but run where? The hollow wasn't a place, it was a door. And it had followed her home. Her eyes fell on the corner of the living room. The journal was there again. Sitting neatly on the coffee table, closed this time. She had left it by the creek. She had seen it in Vienna. She had left it behind twice. It always came back. Her hands trembled as she picked it up. The leather felt warm, as though it had been sitting in sunlight. When she opened it, her grandmother's handwriting sprawled across the page. New words, written as if just inked. You can't fight it alone. Someone else must carry it. Laura's throat tightened. She read the line again, slower, her stomach sinking with every word. Someone else must carry it. Her grandmother hadn't escaped. She had passed it on. That's how she survived. She had given the hollow a new name to call. Laura's breath came ragged, tears welling. No, no, I can't do that. The lights flickered. The air turned heavy, pressing against her chest. The journal's pages flipped violently, as if in a storm. Words scrawled across them faster than she could read. If you don't give it another, it will take you. Knocking thundered from every wall at once. 3 raps. Pause. 3 raps. The tall figure's voice whispered, not from the mirror this time, but directly from the air at her ear. Choose, Laura. Or return. Laura dropped the journal like it had burned her. It hit the floor with a heavy thud, pages still fluttering though no breeze moved. The knocking rattled through the apartment, shaking picture frames on the walls, cups in the cabinets. Choose, the whisper urged again, curling cold against her skin. Her stomach twisted. Was that how her grandmother had done it? Had she written Laura's name in the book? Passed it on to her own granddaughter, just to be free? She thought of her grandmother's final months, pale, distant, whispering to shadows. Maybe she hadn't been free at all. Maybe she just delayed the inevitable. No, Laura whispered, shaking her head. I won't damn someone else. The apartment lights flickered, plunging her into momentary darkness. When they buzzed back to life, the journal was open again, a pen resting neatly on the page. Her name was written there already, Laura. Beneath it was a blank space, waiting. The knocking stopped. Silence settled over the room, thick and expectant. The choice hung heavy in the air. She staggered back, breath ragged, until her shoulders hit the wall. I won't, she said louder, forcing strength into her voice. I'll end this another way. The pen lifted. On its own. Hovering in the air like it was guided by an unseen hand. Slowly, it tilted toward the page. No! She screamed, lunging forward. She grabbed the journal, tore the page free, and crumpled it in her fist. Black liquid seeped through her fingers, burning her skin. She shrieked, dropping the wad. The ink spread across the floor like spilled blood, veins branching outward, crawling up the walls. The hollow wasn't waiting anymore. It was here. The apartment dissolved. The couch, the walls, the windows, everything melted into shadow. The floor sagged and cracked, revealing the pit again, chains rattling in the abyss below. The tall figure rose from the dark, limbs jerking, head tilted. Its mouth opened wide, a cavern of black, and the whisper became a roar. Return. Laura clutched the rebar, her only anchor, and screamed back. No! She swung with everything in her, striking the journal instead of the figure. The cover split, pages scattering like dead leaves into the air. The roar shook the hollow. The figures around the pit convulsed, their mouths opening in silent shrieks. The ground cracked wider, and the tall figure stepped closer, unharmed. The rebar slipped from Laura's trembling hands, clattering uselessly to the ground. Her chest heaved, heart hammering against her ribs so hard she thought it might burst. The journal was gone, torn, destroyed, yet the tall figure remained, its body jerking in sharp, unnatural spasms. The scattered pages of the book didn't fall into the pit. They hung in the air, suspended, spinning slowly. Black ink bled across them, curling into new shapes, new words, as though the hollow itself was writing its own story now. One by one, the pages drifted back together, reforming into a new book on the ground at the figure's feet. Its cover gleamed wet, pulsing faintly like living flesh. Laura's breath hitched. No! The tall figure crouched. Its long, distorted hand stroked the cover almost tenderly before pushing the book toward her across the cracked earth. The whisper came again, not angry now, but coaxing. Right. Her stomach twisted. I won't. I won't! The ground groaned beneath her feet, the pit yawning wider, foul air rising up and choking her lungs. The figures around the circle began to sway, their mouths opening in perfect unison, no sound at first. Then, knocking from their throats. 3 sharp bursts, all at once, as though the world itself were beating like a colossal heart. Laura fell to her knees, palms pressed against her ears. The sound tore through her skull, relentless, unstoppable. The tall figure stepped closer, the new journal sliding across the dirt until it rested against her knees. The whisper deepened, wrapping around her like chains. Right. Or fall. Her hands shook violently, nails digging into her palms until they broke skin. Her grandmother's voice clawed through her mind. Someone else must carry it. Laura's body convulsed with sobs. She didn't want this. She didn't want to damn anyone else. But the pit was opening wider, and the tall figure's shadow loomed over her like a storm. She snatched the journal in both hands and screamed. Then take me! The figures froze. The knocking stopped. Even the hollow itself seemed to hold its breath. The tall figure tilted its head further, its face inches from hers now. Its mouth stretched open until it was nothing but blackness. And the voice, for the first time, didn't whisper. It laughed. You already belong to us. The ground beneath Laura crumbled. Chains shot upward from the pit, snapping around her wrists, her ankles, her throat. She screamed as they yanked her toward the abyss, dragging her across the dirt. The last thing she saw before the pit swallowed her was the city skyline bleeding through the edges of the hollow, Chicago's lights bending, warping, dissolving into black. And then she fell. The fall was endless. Wind roared past Laura's ears, but there was no bottom, no end, only the sensation of being dragged downward through layers of cold and shadow. The chains dug into her wrists and ankles, pulling her tighter, constricting her chest until she couldn't breathe. Then, abruptly, the fall stopped. She hung suspended in a vast cavern. The air stank of rot and iron, thick and suffocating. All around her stretched walls slick with black liquid, veins pulsing faintly like the inside of something alive. Far below, a faint red glow pulsed, throbbing like a colossal heart. With each beat, the chains tightened around her. The whisper returned, louder than ever, not from one voice but thousands layered together. You chose. You return. Laura thrashed, screaming, her voice raw. I didn't choose. You dragged me here. The chains yanked her downward, closer to the glow. Shapes shifted in the dark, figures half-formed, their bodies writhing as if trapped in the walls themselves. Pale faces pushed out of the black stone, mouths open in silent screams before being swallowed again. Her stomach churned. This wasn't just a pit. It was a graveyard of everyone the hollow had taken. The red glow grew brighter as she descended. At its center, something enormous stirred, its body coiled in shadow, only glimpses visible. A claw the size of a car, teeth glinting in the dark. Chains wound tight around its limbs, holding it in place. Her blood ran cold. The well hadn't been a prison. It had been a seal. The hollow wasn't just a place. It was a thing. The voices swelled, a chorus shaking the cavern. Give us another, or stay. Her grandmother's journal, the warnings, the insistence that someone else must carry it, it all clicked into place. This wasn't survival. It was barter. Every escape was bought with another soul. Laura's chest heaved. She thought of the train station, of the strangers she'd passed in Chicago, of her friends, her coworkers. She thought of how easy it would be to scrawl a name, pass this weight to someone else, walk free. Her hands shook. She wanted to live. She wanted to escape. But she couldn't damn someone else. No, she croaked, defiance breaking through her sobs. Then keep me. The cavern fell silent. The chains slackened slightly, not enough to free her, but enough to make her body drop a few feet, closer to the monstrous shape below. A sound rose then, not a whisper, not a chant, but a deep, rumbling laugh that shook the very air. From the red glow, two enormous eyes opened, unblinking, fixed on her. Then you are ours! And the chains pulled her down into the dark. The darkness swallowed Laura whole. Chains cinched tighter, pulling her toward the burning red glow at the pit's core. Heat licked at her skin, not fire, but something heavier, suffocating, like standing too close to molten metal. The vast eyes blinked once, and shadows peeled back, revealing more of the creature. Its body was coiled and bound by endless links, each one thicker than a tree trunk, stretching into the cavern walls. Its flesh was gray, cracked, weeping black fluid that sizzled as it hit the floor. Its mouth opened, lined not with teeth but jagged shards of stone, glowing faintly from within. Laura's breath stuttered. The well hadn't been a gateway to the hollow. The well was the hollow. This thing, this bound monstrosity, was the heart of it all. The voices of the figures above filtered down like rain, hundreds whispering her name. The creature's eyes narrowed, and the cavern trembled with its guttural growl. Feed us. The chains around her wrists loosened just enough for her arms to move. A journal appeared in her lap, fresh, unblemished, its cover pulsing faintly, warm like skin. A pen hovered above it, dripping with black ink that hissed where it landed. Her grandmother's words returned, sharp and merciless. Someone else must carry it. Laura shook her head, hot tears streaking her face. No! I won't damn anyone else! The creature's laugh rumbled through the cavern, a sound so deep it vibrated in her bones. Then you will feed us yourself. The chains snapped taut, dragging her closer to its gaping mouth. Heat seared her skin, the stench of rot and iron overwhelming. Her scream ripped through the dark as she kicked and clawed at the chains. The journal trembled in her lap. The pen scratched violently across the page without her hand guiding it. When she looked down, her vision blurred with horror. Names. Dozens of names she knew. Her co-workers. The waitress at the Vienna diner. The man in camouflage from the train. Her mother. Each one scrawled in black ink. No! She shrieked, ripping at the pages. They bled, thick black liquid soaking her fingers. She tore them out, scattering them into the void, but more appeared instantly, filling the book again. The monster's eyes gleamed brighter. Write or bleed. Choose. The chains pulled tighter, her body stretching toward the mouth of the pit. Heat blistered her skin. Laura's sobs turned to a raw, animal cry. With the last strength in her body, she seized the pen, not to write, but to drive it into her own hand. Pain tore through her palm as blood spilled onto the journal's open page. The ink sizzled, mingling with her blood. The book shuddered, then went still. Above her, the whispers faltered. The monster recoiled slightly, its laugh cut short. Its enormous eyes narrowed, uncertain. Laura's blood smeared across the page formed one word, jagged and defiant. Me. The word glowed red across the journal's page, pulsing like a wound. The chains around Laura jerked, uncertain, as though the hollow itself was confused by her defiance. Her body dangled above the cavern floor, heat blistering her skin, but for the first time since this nightmare began, the voices hesitated. The bound creature let out a guttural roar that shook the pit, but its chains rattled violently, holding it in place. The laughter returned, deeper this time, but fractured. You cannot feed yourself to us. You belong to us already. Laura forced her trembling hand to press harder against the page, smearing more blood across it. "Then take me," she gasped, her voice breaking. "Take only me." The cavern went still. The figures above were silent. The chant stopped. Even the knocking ceased. For a moment, it felt like the hollow was listening. Then, slowly, the blood on the page bled outward, soaking every word, every blank space, until the journal was nothing but a dripping, crimson block. It writhed in her hands, growing hot, too hot to hold. She screamed and dropped it into the abyss below. The pit erupted. The cavern split wider, the chains around the beast straining, snapping sparks where they scraped stone. A chorus of shrieks rose, not only from the creature but from the countless pale figures pressed into the walls, their mouths gaping in torment. Laura's stomach dropped as the ground beneath her gave way. She was falling again, down, always down, until she slammed into cold, wet stone. Her head swam. She blinked and looked around. She was lying in her apartment. The couch. The window. The faint city glow. Everything looked normal, untouched. Her wrists and ankles were free. Her body was whole, though her skin still stung as if burned. Laura sat up slowly, gasping, searching the room for shadows, for whispers. There was only silence. On the coffee table lay the journal. Closed. Her breath caught. She crawled forward, hand hovering above it but not daring to touch. The cover was no longer warm, no longer pulsing. It looked like any old leather book. Her phone buzzed on the floor beside her. With shaking hands, she picked it up. A single notification glowed on the cracked screen. From unknown. It ends with you. Her chest tightened, tears spilling hot down her face. Could it be true? Had she broken the cycle by offering herself instead of another? She clutched the phone to her chest and let herself sob, out of fear, out of exhaustion, out of fragile hope. But then, from the bathroom, came a sound that froze her blood. 3 deliberate knocks. The sound reverberated through the apartment, each knock deliberate, patient, cruel. Laura froze, tears still streaking her face, every muscle in her body rigid. No. Not again. She crept toward the bathroom door, barefoot on the cold floor. Her heart pounded so loudly she thought it would give her away. The silence between each set of knocks was almost worse than the sound itself, stretching out, suffocating. She pressed her palm against the door. The wood was ice-cold, damp. 3 more knocks. She flinched but forced herself to turn the knob. The door creaked open, hinges whining in protest. The bathroom was empty. The mirror, once fogged with words, was clear now. Just her reflection staring back, wild-eyed, pale, drenched in sweat. For a moment, she almost believed it was really over. And then her reflection smiled. Her breath hitched. She wasn't smiling. Her mouth trembled, open in horror. But the image in the glass curled its lips into a wide, unnatural grin, teeth too sharp, too many. The lights flickered. Her reflection's eyes darkened, black bleeding out from the pupils until nothing remained. Laura stumbled back, crashing into the doorframe. The reflection didn't mimic her. It raised one hand slowly, deliberately, and knocked on the inside of the glass. 3 raps. Her phone buzzed in her hand. She almost dropped it. Another text notification lit the cracked screen. From unknown. We said it ends with you. That doesn't mean here. Her reflection leaned forward until its forehead pressed against the other side of the glass. Its mouth moved, but the sound came from inside her head. See you soon, Laura. The mirror cracked down the center with a sharp, splintering snap. And from the fracture, black liquid began to seep. The crack spread like a vein across the mirror, splitting Laura's reflection into jagged fragments. Black liquid oozed from the fracture, thick and tar-like, dripping down the glass and spattering onto the sink. The stench of iron and rot filled the bathroom, suffocating. Laura staggered back, her phone slipping from her trembling hands to the floor. The reflection, her reflection, wasn't broken by the crack. It moved independently now, its face shifting between the shards, lips peeling into that awful grin. Stop, Laura whispered. Her voice shook. Please, just stop. The reflection didn't stop. It raised its hand again, pressing it flat against the glass, smearing the black liquid. And then, slowly, impossibly, its hand pushed through. The surface rippled like water, shards falling away, as pale fingers curled into the air of her bathroom. Laura screamed and lunged for the door, slamming it shut behind her. She fumbled with the lock, twisting it hard, though she knew a lock meant nothing to what had followed her this far. The knocking returned. Not just from the bathroom. From the walls. The ceiling. The floor. 3 raps, echoing through the very bones of the apartment. Her phone buzzed again on the floor where she dropped it. She forced herself to pick it up, her hands slick with sweat. The message glowed against the cracked screen. From unknown. The hollow isn't a place. It's a name. You carry it now. Her breath caught. She dropped the phone as though it had bitten her. The knocking stopped. Silence pressed in, thick and unbearable. Laura backed into the living room, her gaze darting wildly, waiting for something to break the stillness. Then she heard it. Not outside. Not in the bathroom. Inside her. A low, steady thumping in rhythm with her pulse. Knock. 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 Her hands flew to her chest. Her heart hammered beneath her ribs, but the beats weren't her own anymore. They weren't irregular. They weren't frantic. They were deliberate. 3 at a time. The rhythm of the hollow. Laura collapsed to her knees, clutching her chest as the rhythm pounded inside her. Each set of 3 beats felt heavier than the last, like something knocking from within, demanding to be let out. No! She gasped, rocking back and forth on the floor. You're not in me. You're not. Her body convulsed. For a moment she thought her heart had stopped. But then it restarted, 3 brutal thumps that rattled her ribs. The sound echoed through the apartment, not just inside her. The lights flickered. Shadows shifted across the walls, moving against the glow instead of with it. They weren't her shadows. They were taller, tilting their heads. The journal lay on the coffee table again. Closed, but vibrating faintly, as though it too pulsed with her heartbeat. Laura crawled toward it, trembling, her breath sharp and shallow. She slammed her hand down on the cover. If you want me, she hissed, then I'll take you with me. The book snapped open on its own. Blank pages. Waiting. Her grandmother's voice echoed in her mind. Someone else must carry it. Her throat tightened. She grabbed the pen lying beside it, hands slick with sweat, and hovered above the page. One name could end this. One name, and the hollow would shift its gaze. But who? Her mind swarmed with faces. Her neighbors, co-workers, strangers from the train, her own mother. All innocent. All unaware. Her hand shook violently. She couldn't damn them. She dropped the pen. I won't do it! She screamed. The apartment groaned like a living thing. The shadows on the walls peeled free, figures emerging one by one, their eyeless faces fixed on her. The tall one ducked beneath the ceiling, its head cocked at that same impossible angle, mouth stretching wide. The knocking inside her chest grew louder, harder. She coughed blood, crimson splattering across the journal's blank page. The ink spread on its own, forming letters she hadn't written. Laura. Her name bled into every page, over and over, until the journal pulsed like a beating heart. The tall figure stepped closer, its mouth yawning wider until it was nothing but blackness. The whispers became a roar. Return. And the floor beneath her gave way again, dropping her into the hollow's endless dark. The plunge was colder this time, a violent tearing through air and shadow that ripped the breath from Laura's lungs. She fell hard onto damp stone, her body aching as if the chains had crushed her bones on the way down. The cavern spread before her again, the pit, the writhing walls, the bound creature with its vast, burning eyes. But it wasn't silent anymore. The chanting was already there, a deafening chorus of countless voices. They didn't call her name this time. They called with her heart. Thump, thump, thump. Thump, thump, thump. The rhythm of the hollow. Laura staggered to her feet, swaying. The journal lay open at her feet, glowing faintly with every beat of her chest. The pages turned themselves, faster and faster, names scrawling in black ink, her own name on every line. She screamed and kicked it away, but the book slid back, sticking to her like a magnet. The monster's eyes flared, red heat searing the cavern walls. "You are ours!" Laura shook her head violently. "No! Not unless you take me!" The ground split at her feet, chains erupting from the fissures. They lashed at her ankles, wrists, waist, snapping tight. She fell forward, dragged onto her knees before the glowing eyes. The creature's mouth yawned wide, stone teeth grinding as its fetid breath poured over her. "We already did." Laura's body convulsed. The knocking inside her chest grew unbearable, every beat like a hammer against her ribs. She choked, blood flooding her mouth. Her hands clawed at her sternum as though she could tear the sound out. And then, she felt it. Something inside her. Not her heart. Not her. The hollow. A rhythm not her own, pressing outward, pushing, demanding release. Her vision blurred, the cavern dissolving into fragments. She saw flashes. Her apartment, the diner in Vienna, the train station, the prison floodlights. The hollow wasn't confined. It was everywhere, threading through places, through people. It had been passed like a curse for generations. And now it lived inside her. The creature leaned closer, its vast form rattling its chains, eyes burning with cruel hunger. "Open the door, Laura!" Her ribs cracked with the next thump. "Be the hollow!" Laura collapsed forward, gasping, clutching at her chest as if she could rip the sound out with her bare hands. The knocking inside her was no longer a rhythm, it was a command. Each triple beat drove spikes of agony through her ribs. The bound creature loomed above, chains straining, its stone teeth grinding with anticipation. The cavern walls pulsed like veins, the figures embedded in them writhing as though her pain fed them. "Open the door!" The words weren't sound, they were force, pressing down on her skull until her vision fractured. Laura screamed. "No! I'm not yours!" Her cry echoed through the cavern, sharp enough to split the chanting for a breath. She forced herself upright against the pull of the chains, blood streaming from her mouth, her hands slick and trembling. The journal snapped open again in front of her. Its pages glowed red this time, her name burning across every line. Her grandmother's voice slid into her thoughts, faint and weary. Someone else must carry it. Laura's throat tightened. "No, not again," she whispered. "I won't damn anyone else." But the hollow didn't wait. The pen hovered above the page, dripping black liquid like venom. It trembled in the air, straining, aching to write. The monster's laughter rumbled so deep the cavern shook. "Then bleed it out yourself." The knocking inside her heart grew louder, faster. Her chest convulsed with each beat, ribs cracking like dry wood. She felt something inside her straining to escape, clawing its way out. She staggered to her feet, swaying, and seized the pen midair. It burned in her hand, black liquid searing her skin. Her vision swam with red, but she forced the tip to the page. One word. "Me." Again and again, she scrawled it, her blood mixing with the ink until the letters bled across the paper. Each stroke was a scream, her body convulsing with the effort. The chanting faltered. The bound creature roared, the sound splitting stone, chains rattling violently. The cavern walls cracked. Figures screamed, their pale forms melting into the stone as though burned. Laura dropped the pen, collapsing to her knees. The journal glowed brighter, hotter, until it burst into flame, black fire that consumed every page. The creature shrieked, thrashing against its bonds. Its enormous eyes dimmed, flickering like dying coals. For the first time, the hollow reeled. Laura lay on the stone floor, chest heaving, the rhythm inside her heart sputtering. For a fleeting, impossible moment, there was silence. And then, knock, knock, knock. But this time, it wasn't inside her. It came from behind. From the cavern door she hadn't noticed until now. A massive iron gate set into the wall, trembling with each beat. The hollow wasn't ending. It was opening. The iron gate shuddered with every knock, dust cascading from the cavern ceiling. Each blow reverberated through Laura's bones, louder than her own heartbeat, louder than the monster's chains. She dragged herself up on shaking arms, staring at the massive doors. They were carved with shapes, spirals, hollow circles, rows of faceless figures tilting their heads. She realized with a jolt that they weren't carvings at all. They were pressed faces, thousands of them, mouths open in silent screams, frozen into the metal itself. The knocking grew stronger. Knock. 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 The bound creature howled, its chains snapping taut, sparks of black fire cascading into the abyss. Its vast body writhed, straining against its prison, but it wasn't laughing anymore. It was afraid. Laura stumbled back, clutching her chest. The rhythm inside her faltered, as if whatever lived there was being drowned out by the pounding from the gate. The journal's ashes smoldered at her feet, twitching as though still alive. Her grandmother's voice came again, clearer this time, riding on the roar of the hollow. I gave it away, but I never stopped hearing it. Laura, it doesn't end. Not with you. Not with me. Her breath came ragged, tears cutting down her face. Then how do I stop it? The voice in her mind broke with grief. You can't. You can only choose where it goes. The iron doors buckled inward, beams of blinding light cutting through the cracks. Not warm light, cold, sterile, like the glare of a surgical lamp. From the gap, Laura heard whispers, countless voices murmuring in unison. Her name among them. Laura! 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 The bound creature roared again, its massive eyes locked on her. Chains rattled like thunder as it screamed words that shook the walls. Do not open it! Laura's knees buckled. The hollow's heart itself was begging her. But the gate shuddered again. The faces pressed into the metal began to move, their mouths opening wider, whispering louder, their voices spilling into the cavern. Let us in. Let us out. Let us through. Laura's body convulsed with another triple knock inside her chest. Her vision blurred, and for a heartbeat, she wasn't in the cavern anymore. She was in her apartment, standing before her bathroom mirror, its fractured surface leaking black liquid. She was in the Vienna clearing, the well yawning open. She was on the train, the man in camouflage watching her, his lips curling into a knowing smile. The hollow was everywhere. The gate groaned, cracks widening. Whatever was on the other side was coming through. And Laura understood, this wasn't about her survival anymore. This was about what world would break when the door finally opened. The iron gate buckled inward, the cavern trembling with each thunderous blow. Dust and fragments of stone rained from above. The faces pressed into the metal writhed now, their mouths opening and closing in perfect rhythm with the pounding. Knock. 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 The bound creature roared again, pulling at its chains with such force that the cavern walls cracked. Its eyes blazed red, fixed on Laura. Do not open it! Laura staggered back, arms wrapped around her chest. The knocking inside her heart answered the gates pounding in perfect sync, 3 at a time, threatening to tear her ribs apart. The whispers poured through the cracks in the doors, countless voices overlapping. Let us in. Let us out. Let us through. Her grandmother's voice flickered faintly in her mind again, broken, weary, full of regret. I passed it on to survive. But I should have ended with me. Laura's breath caught. How? How do I end it? No answer came. The gate splintered. A blinding fissure of cold light spilled into the cavern, washing over her skin, burning colder than ice. The figures embedded in the walls shrieked, their pale mouths stretching wider as the light touched them, their bodies convulsing before melting back into the stone. The creature's chains snapped taut again, its massive form jerking violently. It wasn't mocking her now. It was desperate. You are the door! It roared, its voice rattling the ground. Choose, or everything breaks. Laura's heart slammed against her ribs, each knock heavier than the last. She dropped to her knees, clutching her chest, blood spilling from her mouth. Her mind fractured with visions, her apartment drenched in black liquid, The diner in Vienna empty and silent, Chicago streets lined with motionless figures, their heads tilting in unison. The hollow wasn't a place. It was a contagion. And she was its host. The gate cracked wider. A hand thrust through, pale, skeletal, its fingers scraping grooves into the stone floor. Another followed, then another, until dozens clawed at the edges, forcing it open. Laura sobbed, choking on her own breath. She knew, with bone-deep certainty, that if the doors opened fully, there would be no hollow, no world, just one endless, devouring dark. The bound creature screamed one last command, a roar that split the cavern. Die with it! The journal's ashes stirred again at her feet, swirling into a faint, glowing ember. Her blood smeared across the ground pulsed in time with her heart. And Laura realized she didn't have to pass it on. She didn't have to let it open. She could end with her. But to do that, she had to stop her own heart. The knocking grew louder, her ribs cracking, vision blackening. She pressed her hands hard to her chest and whispered, "With me." Laura's whisper echoed like a prayer swallowed by the cavern. "With me." The knocking inside her chest grew violent, a hammering that rattled her ribs until she felt them splinter. Blood filled her mouth, hot and metallic. She dropped to her knees, palms pressed hard against her sternum, fighting against the rhythm that wasn't hers. The bound creature writhed, its chains snapping sparks against the cavern walls. Its blazing eyes locked onto her, not mocking, not commanding, but almost reverent. The iron gate thundered, the skeletal hands clawing further through the widening crack. Pale arms reached, dozens, hundreds, their whispers overlapping in a frenzy. "Let us in. Let us out. Let us through." Her grandmother's voice trembled in her mind one last time, thin and breaking. "It should have ended with me, but it can end with you." Laura's body convulsed as her heart pounded in triple beats. Knock, knock, knock. Her chest was going to tear open. She screamed through the pain, forcing her bloodied hand against the glowing ember of journal ashes. The cavern erupted in light. Her name bled across the ground in searing red letters. Laura. It spread outward, carving into stone, into the walls, into the chains of the creature. The figures embedded in the walls shrieked and melted into ash. The monster roared, its body convulsing. But this time, it didn't sound afraid. It sounded free. The chains shattered. The cavern shook violently, cracks splitting wide. The iron gates splintered under the strain, skeletal hands shriveling to dust in the sudden blaze. The knocking inside her chest hit one final crescendo. Knock. 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 Then silence. Laura collapsed, her body falling limp against the stone. Her chest no longer rose. Her eyes stared upward, glassy, as the hollow dissolved around her, walls collapsing, figures burning, the pit collapsing into itself. The last thing she saw before everything went dark was the creature's vast silhouette rising, no longer bound, no longer laughing. It leaned down, its burning eyes filling her vision, and in a voice that shook the dying hollow, it whispered, "With you." Then all was black. Blackness pressed around Laura, endless and absolute. No cavern, no chains, no pit. Just silence, so deep it rang in her skull. For a fleeting moment, she thought she was gone, that death had taken her. Then, knock, knock, knock. Her eyes snapped open. She was standing, not on stone, not in her apartment, but in a long, endless hallway. Its walls were gray, damp, and lined with doors. Hundreds of them. Each door identical, iron handles, peeling paint, faint numbers scratched into the wood. Every door throbbed faintly, pulsing in rhythm with the knock. Her stomach clenched. She staggered forward, her bare feet slapping against the wet concrete floor. Water dripped from pipes overhead, echoing with every step. The air stank of mildew and rust. As she passed, some doors rattled violently. Others were silent. One creaked open a fraction, and she caught a glimpse of an eye staring back at her before the gap slammed shut. "Laura!" The voice came from everywhere at once, whispering behind each door, crawling under the floor, slithering across her skin. Her hands shook. Where am I? The hallway stretched on, endless. No matter how fast she moved, the doors continued, stretching into the horizon. Then she saw it, one door at the far end, larger than the rest. Its frame was carved with the same spirals she'd seen on the hollow's gate. Unlike the others, this one didn't pulse with the knocking. It pulsed with her heartbeat. Her steps slowed. She already knew what it was. Her door. The whisper thickened, pressing against her skull, turning into words. You are the hollow now. You carry the doors. Choose which one to open, or keep them all. Laura's chest tightened. If she opened one, would she be releasing it into someone else's world? Passing it on, damning them like her grandmother had damned her? Her throat burned. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I ended with me, she whispered, defiant even as her knees buckled. It ends with me. The doors shuddered violently, all of them rattling at once. Screams erupted from behind them, fists pounding against wood, nails dragging down iron handles. The large door at the end of the hall creaked open on its own. A blinding white light spilled through the crack. And a voice she recognized, her grandmother's, called gently from beyond. Then come through, Laura! End it! Her shaking hand reached for the door. Laura's hand hovered over the massive door handle, trembling so hard she could barely close her fingers around it. The light spilling from the crack was blinding, pure, sterile, so different from the hollow's suffocating dark. It bathed her face, warm but heavy, like it was pulling her closer. Her grandmother's voice drifted out again, soft and steady. It's the only way. End it, Laura. Her chest tightened. But what's behind it? She whispered, her throat raw. The hallway groaned, the smaller doors rattling violently. Knocking thundered from all sides now, 3 raps at a time, pounding in rhythm with her pulse. Screams bled through the iron handles, furious, desperate. Don't listen, her grandmother urged. They'll claw forever if you let them. Close their voices. Close their world. Laura pressed her forehead against the cold metal of the large door. Her tears streaked down, dripping onto the frame. If I go through, will it stop? Will it really stop? There was no answer. Only the knocking. Knock. 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 Her hand slipped down to the handle. It was warm, almost burning, and when she gripped it, she swore she felt a heartbeat inside the metal. The other doors howled at once. No. 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 100 voices screamed her name. Laura! They begged, pleaded, shrieked. The hallway shook as fists pounded from behind the doors, splintering wood, bending iron. Her grandmother's voice cut through them, firm now, commanding. Close it with you. End it, Laura. End it now. Laura squeezed her eyes shut, her knuckles white on the handle. Her body shook with sobs, torn between voices, between survival and sacrifice. The light widened, spilling through the cracks like liquid fire. And then, a single, clear knock from behind the large door. Not 3. Just 1. Laura froze. Her grandmother's voice broke into a sob. Please! And in that trembling moment, Laura realized the truth. Her grandmother's voice wasn't coming from beyond the door. It was coming from inside it. Laura's breath caught in her throat. She pressed her ear to the massive door, the heat from its frame searing her skin. Her grandmother's voice came again, muffled but clear. I thought it would end, but it never did. It's me, Laura. It's always been me. Her chest tightened, heart knocking triple beats in frantic rhythm. No, she whispered. You gave it to me. You passed it on. The voice trembled, breaking. I had to. I couldn't carry it anymore. But I never escaped. I've been here, behind the door. Trapped. Waiting for someone else to open it. Laura staggered back, the hallway spinning. The other doors rattled violently now, dozens of fists pounding, voices shrieking her name. The knocking was deafening, shaking the floor beneath her feet. The large door pulsed with her heartbeat, each thump sending cracks spidering across its surface. White light spilled out brighter with every pulse. "Open it, Laura!" her grandmother begged. "Free me! Free us both!" Her stomach lurched. If she opened it, she might release her grandmother. Or she might unleash everything behind every door into the world. The voices from the smaller doors shrieked louder, overlapping in a chorus of rage. "Don't open it! She's lying! You'll damn us all!" Laura clutched her head, falling to her knees, sobbing. The pounding inside her chest threatened to tear her apart. Her grandmother's voice softened again, almost tender. "You've suffered enough, my sweet girl. Don't fight it anymore. Let me out. Let it end." Laura's trembling hand rose to the handle. The light spilled over her, blinding, burning. Her breath came in sharp, shallow gasps. Knock. 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 This time, the sound came from inside her own body, rattling her bones. The smaller doors screamed. The hallway shook. The large door blazed like the sun. Laura had one choice left. Either turn the handle, or let the knocking consume her heart completely. Laura's fingers closed around the burning handle. Her skin sizzled, the smell of scorched flesh filling the hallway, but she didn't let go. The knocking inside her chest synced with the pulse of the massive door, each beat like a drum summoning her forward. "Yes," her grandmother's voice urged. "Just a little more. Open it, Laura." The smaller doors rattled harder, their voices rising in a frenzy. "Don't. Don't. Don't." Their pounding shook the floor, dust raining from the ceiling. Tears blurred Laura's vision. "If I open this," she whispered, "what happens to the world?" Her grandmother's voice broke, trembling with desperation. "It doesn't matter anymore. Only we matter. Free me." The words cracked something inside Laura. Her sobs turned sharp, ragged. You damned me. You knew what would happen, and you gave it to me anyway." The silence behind the door was long, heavy. Then, softly, "Yes." The admission hollowed her out. Rage burned hot through her grief. She tightened her grip on the handle, not to turn it, but to anchor herself against the pounding inside her chest. The light flared brighter, searing her eyes. She forced herself to her feet, screaming against the cacophony of voices. "No! It ends with me!" The doors all down the hallway shrieked at once. Some split open, pale hands clawing through the gaps, black liquid pouring onto the floor. The massive door cracked wider, light spilling like molten fire. Laura pulled her bloodied hand from the handle and pressed it against her chest. The knocking inside her heart was unbearable now, a relentless battering ram against her ribs. She realized what she had to do. If the hollow lived in her heart, then the only way to close the doors, truly close them, was to destroy the lock itself. Her body shook with terror. Her voice came out in a broken whisper. "With me." She curled her fingers into a fist, nails digging deep into her own chest, and drove her hand inward. Agony tore through her body. Her scream echoed down the hallway as her ribs cracked under her own strength. Hot blood poured down her stomach. She clawed deeper, forcing her way into the pounding, relentless heart. The knocking faltered. The massive door rattled violently, light flickering. The smaller doors howled, voices shrieking in fury. Laura's vision blurred. She tore her heart free, slick, broken, pulsing weakly in her trembling hands. One last knock. Then silence. The doors stilled. The light dimmed. The hallway cracked and collapsed into shadow. Laura fell with it, her heart slipping from her grasp, vanishing into the dark. Laura's body plummeted through blackness, weightless, blood streaming in ribbons that dissolved before reaching the void below. She expected nothing, oblivion, an end. But the hollow wasn't merciful. She landed hard on stone. Her body lay broken, ribs shattered, blood pooling beneath her. Yet she was conscious. The cavern was back, the pit, the monstrous chains, the searing red glow. Only now, something was missing. Her heartbeat. Silence filled her chest where rhythm once was. But the world around her still pulsed, the cavern walls throbbing with that same triple beat. Knock. 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 Her head lifted weakly. The creature loomed above her, its eyes burning brighter than ever, no longer bound. The chains that once held it dangled loose, useless. You gave yourself. It rumbled, voice shaking the walls. But you did not end us. You became us. Laura tried to speak, but blood bubbled from her lips. Her trembling hands pressed against the wound in her chest, but there was no pain now, only emptiness. The creature leaned closer, its vast shadow consuming her. Every heart you tried to defy, every door you tried to close, was only another path. There is no end, Laura. There is only the hollow. The cavern floor cracked beneath her. She looked down, horror seizing her throat. Her blood, spilled across the stone, pulsed in triple knocks. Veins of black spread outward, crawling across the ground, racing up the walls. The cavern itself was becoming her. The figures that lined the stone, those pale, eyeless watchers, lifted their heads. But this time, they weren't looking at the creature. They were looking at her. She forced out a whisper, broken and desperate. I ended it. The creature's mouth split wide, jagged and endless. You opened it. The walls convulsed. The pit yawned wider, light bleeding into every crack. Doors appeared, stretching upward, outward, an infinite hallway blooming from her chest wound, filling the hollow with endless ways in and out. Her vision dimmed, but she saw it clearly. She wasn't the victim anymore. She was the door. The realization hollowed her out. Laura lay sprawled on the stone, staring at the endless hallway blooming from her chest. Doors stretched into infinity, iron, wood, glass, some so warped they looked alive. Each one pulsed faintly with her stolen heartbeat. The figures crowded closer, surrounding her. They knelt, tilting their heads in reverence, their eyeless faces fixed on her like worshippers before an altar. The bound creature, no longer bound, lowered its colossal head, chains dragging across the floor with a sound like grinding bones. Its molten eyes burned into hers. Now you understand. You are the hollow. Laura's lips trembled, her voice faint. I didn't want this. I wanted it to end. The creature's laugh rolled through the cavern, shaking the doors that sprouted from her wound. There is no end. Only passage. The doors nearest to her groaned, one creaking open just a sliver. Cold light spilled through, and Laura heard voices on the other side, distant, muffled. Chicago. A street corner. Car horns. Footsteps. Someone humming to themselves. Her blood went cold. No, don't. The door slammed open wider, rattling on its hinges. One of the pale figures stepped through, its body flickering as it crossed. On the other side, Laura saw it appear beneath a flickering street lamp, head tilting slowly toward an unsuspecting woman waiting for the bus. Laura screamed, a raw, guttural sound. Stop! The figure froze, as if obeying. But it didn't retreat. It simply stood, waiting. The creature's massive head tilted. They answer to you now. Every door opens where you will it. The doors throbbed with her heartbeat, dozens of them rattling as if begging to be chosen. Behind each, voices whispered, cried, begged for release. Her grandmother's voice drifted faintly from one, trembling, exhausted. Laura, don't let them out. Please! Her chest ached with the weight of it all. She wasn't just trapped anymore, she was keeper, jailer, gate. The creature's laughter rumbled low. Choose wisely, little door. Open them, or watch them open themselves. The nearest door shuddered, its hinges bending, ready to burst. Laura staggered forward, blood dripping down her torn chest, and pressed her trembling hand against it. No, she whispered. Not this one. The door stilled. For the first time, the cavern fell silent, every figure, every whisper, waiting for her command. And Laura understood the horror of her inheritance. She hadn't ended the hollow. She had become its keeper. The silence pressed against Laura's ears until it roared. The figures knelt in a perfect ring around her, their stillness suffocating. The doors that bloomed from her chest pulsed faintly, each one waiting. Listening. Her trembling hand stayed on the iron door she had stilled. Its cold surface throbbed faintly, like a second heartbeat beneath her palm. The voices behind it, her grandmother's among them, fell quiet. The realization settled like ice in her stomach. They weren't just bound by the hollow anymore. They were bound by her. The massive creature loomed above, molten eyes gleaming. Chains dragged behind it, but they no longer held it. They coiled lazily like serpents, their weight shifting with each breath. "Keep her," it rumbled, voice shaking the stone. "You are what they kneel to now." Laura staggered back, blood still dripping from her torn chest. "No. I won't keep them. I won't open anything. I'll lock it all down, forever." The creature's jagged mouth twisted into a grin. "Forever is longer than you know." The cavern trembled as dozens of doors rattled violently, their hinges straining. Some banged against their frames, others cracked with blinding light spilling through the seams. The whispers rose again, each door filled with desperate voices. "Laura, please. Let me out. We're waiting." And beneath it all, the steady chant of the figures, low and rhythmic, heads tilting in perfect unison. "Knock. Knock. Knock." Laura clutched at her head, tears burning her eyes. I can't hold them all." The creature leaned closer, its hot breath searing her skin. "Then don't. Choose." The iron door beneath her hand pulsed harder, begging to be opened. Another one near her shoulder cracked open a sliver, spilling pale moonlight and the sound of wind rushing through trees. She caught a glimpse of something, the clearing in Vienna. Her stomach twisted. If she didn't control them, they would open themselves. She was the door. The hollow. And every choice, every hesitation, carried a cost. Laura pressed her bloodied hand harder against the iron door, her voice breaking. "Then I'll keep them shut. All of them. If it kills me." The creature's laughter rumbled, low and cruel. "It already has." The chant grew louder, doors rattling like a storm, the entire cavern shuddering beneath her feet. And Laura realized the true horror. It wasn't just her life tied to these doors. It was every world they led to. The cavern shook with the force of the voices, each door pounding in sync, the rhythm of the hollow stretching across her ribs. The sound was deafening, suffocating. Laura stumbled, clutching her torn chest, staring in horror as the doors began to split open on their own. Thin slivers of light leaked out, cold, golden, red, each one revealing glimpses of somewhere else. Behind one, Chicago streets. Empty this time, but lampposts flickered violently, shadows swaying where no one stood. Behind another, the clearing in Vienna, the ruined farmhouse standing upright again, windows glowing faintly as though inhabited. Behind a third, a hospital room. Monitors beeped steadily beside a bed where a man sat upright, staring blankly at the wall. His head tilted. Laura cried out, staggering back, shaking her head violently. "No! No, stay shut!" The doors froze, every last one of them, like the whole cavern was holding its breath, waiting for her command. The towering creature leaned low, its eyes molten coals, its jagged smile wide. "Keep her," it growled, the word reverberating through her bones. "Every world is yours to open, or to bind." Her breath came fast and shallow. The enormity of it crushed her. I can't hold them all. I'm not." The creature's laugh rolled like thunder. "You already do." The figures knelt lower, their chant rising until it rattled the walls. "Knock! Knock! Knock!" Laura sank to her knees, clutching her face, sobs tearing through her. She had fought so hard to end it, but there was no end. Only passage. Only choice. Her grandmother's voice whispered faintly from somewhere among the doors. "I tried. I failed, forgive me." Laura forced her head up, eyes red and wild. "If I'm the door," she rasped, "then I choose." The creature loomed closer, waiting. Laura's hand hovered over the nearest frame, her blood dripping onto its threshold. The hinges rattled eager. She didn't know if closing them all would collapse the hollow, or the world itself. But she knew one thing. She couldn't let them spill free. She pressed her palm flat against the iron door. "I lock you in." The cavern convulsed. The doors shuddered violently, screams erupting from behind them as if her words scorched the very air. Black chains burst from the ground, wrapping each frame, slamming them shut one by one. The chanting stopped. The creature reared back, its eyes blazing with fury. "You bind yourself, Keeper. There is no release now." Laura's body trembled, the chains crawling up her arms, wrapping around her chest like a cage. Her heartbeat faltered. She wasn't just the door anymore. She was the lock. The chains coiled tighter around Laura's body, digging into her flesh until blood trickled down her arms and sides. Each link pulsed with the same terrible rhythm that had once lived in her chest. Knock, knock, knock. But now it was contained, locked within the metal biting into her. The cavern had gone deathly still. Every door was sealed, black chains crisscrossing their frames, glowing faintly as if her blood powered them. The pale figures remained kneeling, motionless, their eyeless faces turned toward her in silent reverence. Laura trembled, her voice cracking as she whispered, "It's over. I locked them. I locked them all." The towering creature loomed forward, molten eyes burning into hers. Its jagged mouth twisted, not in laughter this time but in something like hunger. "You bound them. You bound yourself. But the hollow cannot be destroyed, Keeper. Only carried." Her stomach dropped. "No, no, I ended it." The creature's chains rattled lazily, echoing through the vast cavern. "You did not end. You became. Every lock has a key. And now..." It lowered its head, massive and heavy, until its cracked stone teeth were inches from her face. "You are the key." The cavern trembled. Laura gasped as the chains binding her body sank deeper, fusing into her skin. The rhythm slowed, steady now, matching not just her heartbeat but the pulse of the hollow itself. The figures rose to their feet in unison, their heads cocking at the same grotesque angle. And together they whispered, "Keeper of doors! Keeper of locks!" Laura screamed, clawing at the chains, but they were part of her now, glowing veins etched into her flesh. The doors rattled once more, testing their bonds, their whispers seeping through the cracks. "Laura! Laura, let us out!" Her sobs echoed through the cavern, drowned by the figure's final words as it reared to its full height, its shadow swallowing her. The hollow never ends. It only wears a new face. And in the reflection of its burning eyes, Laura saw herself, head tilted, eyes black, chains spilling from her skin. The new keeper. Laura staggered to her feet, chains clinking with every movement. They dragged behind her like a spectral weight, scraping across the stone. Her chest felt hollow, a cavity where her heart had once been, now filled with the rhythm of countless locked doors. The pale figures gathered closer, heads still cocked, their whispers weaving into a single phrase. "Keeper! Keeper! Keeper!" She shook her head violently. "No! I'm not! I didn't want this!" Her voice cracked, echoing through the cavern. The creature towered above, its molten eyes unblinking. "Want has nothing to do with it. You carried it. You chose to bind it. And now you bear it until another carries it from you." Laura stumbled backward, her chains clattering against the ground. "I won't pass it on. I won't damn anyone else." The creature leaned closer, its breath hot and metallic, washing over her. "Then you will carry it forever." The cavern shook. The doors behind her strained against their bindings, glowing faintly as muffled voices clawed at the silence. Some begged. Others cursed. A few, her grandmothers among them, whispered with brittle sorrow, "Laura, please let me out." Her hands flew to her ears, tears streaking down her face. "Stop it! Stop!" But the voices didn't stop. They grew louder, overlapping, hundreds calling her name at once. Her knees buckled, chains rattling, dragging her down. The cavern floor cracked beneath her, light spilling through the fissures. And then, sudden, blinding silence. Laura looked up. The cavern was gone. She was standing in her apartment again. The journal lay on the coffee table, whole, untouched. its cover glistening faintly like fresh ink. Her chest burned with every breath, the chains invisible now but heavy all the same. From the street outside she heard it. Knock. 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 The sound spread through the walls, the floor, the ceiling. Not just in her apartment, through the whole building. And faintly, beneath the rhythm, voices rose in unison. Keeper of doors. Keeper of locks. Laura collapsed onto the couch, burying her face in her bloodied hands, the weight of eternity pressing down on her. Because the truth was clear now. She hadn't escaped the hollow. She was the hollow. Laura sat motionless on the couch, trembling, the journal glinting faintly in the dim light. Outside, the knocks spread like a sickness, 3 steady raps that echoed through the entire building. She could hear doors opening in the hallway, neighbors stepping out, confused voices asking who was there. Her stomach dropped. She staggered to the window and pulled back the curtain. Figures stood on the sidewalk below. Dozens of them, pale and head-tilted, gazing upward at her apartment. More seeped from alleyways, from between parked cars, gathering under the jaundiced glow of the street lamps. And in the middle of the street stood the tallest one. It didn't point this time. It only bowed its head slightly, like a soldier before a commander. Laura stumbled back from the window, breath ragged. "No," she whispered. I won't unleash you on them." The journal snapped open on the table, pages turning violently until they stopped. Black ink bled across the paper, forming words that pulsed like wounds. "You already have." A chorus of knocks resounded from every apartment door on her floor. Her neighbors cried out in confusion. One voice, Mrs. Halpern, the old woman across the hall, shouted through her door. "Who's there?" Laura's chest seized. Her chains rattled, inaudible, invisible, yet she felt them tighten. She realized with horror what the creature had meant. She wasn't just the lock. She was the invitation. A scream tore from her throat. She grabbed the journal, slammed it shut, and pressed it against her chest. "Stay with me!" she shouted. "With me, damn you!" For a heartbeat, the knocking stopped. Then, faintly, a new sound came. Knocks, not from outside, but from inside her apartment. 3 raps on her bedroom door. Laura froze, every hair on her body rising. The door handle trembled, slow and deliberate. Her phone buzzed on the table, screen cracked but still glowing. A new message flashed across it. From unknown. "You can't keep them forever. Keys turn. Locks break. Doors open." The knocking grew louder, rattling the frame. And then, her own voice, from the other side of the bedroom door. "Laura, let me in." Laura's blood ran cold. Her own voice, identical, trembling, broken, slid through the wood of the bedroom door like smoke. "Laura, let me in." She backed toward the couch, clutching the journal against her chest so hard the leather cut into her palms. "No. No, you're not me." The doorknob twisted slowly. Her own voice again, firmer this time. "Please. I'm so tired. Let me in." The chains inside her tightened, coiling around her ribs, tugging her forward. She stumbled, dragged a step closer to the door against her will. Her feet scraped across the floor, heels digging in. "No!" she screamed. She turned, trying to run, but the invisible pull yanked her back until her spine smacked against the bedroom door. The wood was freezing against her skin. Her voice whispered from the other side, so close it could have been her lips against her ear. "If you don't let me in, I'll let myself out." The knocking started again, from every wall, every corner, every shadow. 3 perfect raps, in time with the frantic rhythm clawing inside her chest. Laura sobbed, her nails raking across the journal's cover. She wanted to burn it, to tear it apart, but she knew now it would only return, waiting, patient. The hollow didn't lose. It waited. The doorknob clicked. The lock gave. Laura shoved her weight against the door, screaming, but the pressure on the other side was immense. The door creaked open a fraction, just enough for her to see through the gap. Her own face stared back. Pale. Hollow-eyed. a wide, broken smile splitting her features. "Keeper," the double whispered. "It's time to trade places." The door slammed wide. Laura's chain snapped taut, dragging her forward into the dark. Laura was yanked through the bedroom doorway, her scream cut short as the chains cinched tighter, pulling her into the dark. The air beyond wasn't her bedroom. It was the hollow, its endless cavern yawning wide. Doors lined the black walls, each rattling, each whispering her name. Her double stepped out of the shadows, the same pale face, the same trembling body, but with no chains. Its chest rose and fell with a steady heartbeat, something Laura no longer had. It tilted its head, smiling with her own cracked lips. "You carried it long enough," the double whispered. "Now I'll carry you." Laura staggered back, chains dragging across the stone. "No, you're not me." The double's smile widened, grotesque. "I'm the part of you that wanted to live. The part that would have written a name. The part that wouldn't bleed for strangers." Laura's stomach lurched. Her grandmother's words rang again in her head. Someone else must carry it. The double's chains were invisible. Its skin was clean. It had already shed the weight. The towering creature emerged from the shadows, molten eyes fixed on them both. It laughed, a sound that shook the hollow's walls. "Every keeper makes a choice. You tried to lock the doors. She will open them." The double turned, running a pale hand along the frame of the nearest door. It rattled eagerly, glowing with cold light. Behind it, Laura heard the faint hum of Chicago traffic, horns and footsteps spilling through the crack. Her stomach dropped. "Don't, please don't!" The double looked back at her, the smile gone now, face flat, empty. "You made me, Laura. You left me outside when you locked yourself in. And now, I'm free." It placed its hand on the door handle. The hinges creaked. The whispers roared. The chains binding Laura's body yanked her to her knees, forcing her to watch. The door opened, and the hollow spilled through. Light burst through the door, blinding and cold. Laura shielded her face with her bound arms, but the chains forced her head up, made her look. On the other side, Chicago's streets. But not as she remembered them. The lamps burned white-hot, buzzing like swarms of insects. Cars sat motionless at intersections, their drivers slumped over steering wheels, eyes open and black. Pedestrians lined the sidewalks in perfect stillness, heads tilted at the same grotesque angle as the hollow's figures. And then they moved, every single one, jerking their heads toward the door in unison. Toward her. Laura's double stepped through the threshold, chains rattling faintly behind it though none were visible on its body. The pale crowd parted, silent, reverent. It looked back at Laura and whispered, "You stay, keeper. I'll be door." Laura thrashed against the chains, screaming, "No! Close it! Close it!" The cavern walls groaned, the other doors rattling as though they too hungered to be opened. The pale figures embedded in the stone clawed at their frames, whispering louder, overlapping until the air vibrated with their voices. The creature's molten eyes burned brighter. "The hollow has no end, keeper. Only expansion. One world. Then another. And another." Laura's sobs broke into a ragged scream. "Then take me instead! Take me!" The double paused in the doorway, her hollow-eyed reflection smiling faintly. "That's exactly what you did." And with that, it stepped fully into the Chicago street. The figures on the sidewalk moved forward, joining it, flowing out from the hollow like a tide. Their mouths opened in unison, knocking sounds reverberating from their throats. Knock. 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 The iron door slammed wide, light flooding the cavern. The chains around Laura pulled tighter, dragging her backward, deeper into the dark. The last thing she saw before the hollow swallowed her was her double raising its arms to the sky, and the entire city bowing its head in answer. Laura's scream echoed through the hollow as the chains dragged her into its depths. She clawed at the stone floor, nails breaking, blood smearing across the cracks, but the pull was merciless. The light from the open door, her city, her world, faded behind her, shrinking into a pale sliver until it was gone. Darkness swallowed her. The chains coiled tighter, not around her limbs this time, but through her flesh, burrowing under her skin, lacing through her bones. She convulsed, choking on the weight of them, until she felt less like a person and more like a lock forged of blood and steel. The cavern pulsed in rhythm with her. Knock. 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 Her body slumped against the stone, trembling. She forced her eyes open. The towering creature loomed above, its burning eyes searing her broken form. "It is done!" it rumbled, the sound shaking the walls. "The door walks your world now. The lock stays here." Laura's throat was raw, but she forced out words between ragged breaths. "You tricked me!" The creature's jagged mouth twisted. "You tricked yourself? Every keeper does." The figures around her knelt, heads bowed in reverence. Behind their silence, Laura heard the echoes of other worlds, cities, forests, homes, each one rattling faintly with the hollow's rhythm. The doors she had sealed trembled, hungry. Her double was out there now, unchained, opening them. Her vision blurred. She wanted to scream, to tear free, to undo it all. But the chains inside her pulsed with terrible certainty. She wasn't meant to stop it. She was meant to hold it, to contain the hollow while it spread. Her body slumped forward, tears streaking her face. The whispers of the doors swelled around her, endless and suffocating. "Keeper! Keeper! Keeper!" The creature leaned closer, its molten eyes filling her fading sight. "Rest now. The hollow wears your face. The world will never know the difference." And as Laura's vision dissolved into black, the knocking carried on, steady, patient, eternal. Knock. Knock. Knock.